All right, so we are live, we are here, and we are up and running. How is everybody doing this evening? Hopefully, everybody is doing great. I know this is a long anticipated reasoning that a lot of you have been waiting for, right? Because it was supposed to happen a while back, and reasons it didn't, right? But here we are right now for that reasoning between Mr. Vegas and the UIC's president, Mr. Joseph L. Patterson. All right. So while we're here right now, I want to ask everybody to just share out the stream and get it out there to more persons so they can know that we are on. All right. And this wasn't a little false promo that we're going to have Mr. Vegas and Mr. Patterson on today. We are here, we're live, we're up, and we're running. All right. So if you haven't shared as yet, share out the program right now and let's get some more persons on, because this is going to be a powerful conversation. This right here is going to be a powerful conversation between Mr. Vegas and Mr. Patterson. Right now, I want to ask everybody who is here to please, right, while you're here, to please just be respectful, 100% respectful, because we're adults here, to have a conversation, and we should be able to have a sensible conversation. So at this point, I'm going to tell all my moderators right now who's here, if you're in the comment section, moderators, you have my permission to block anybody who you see comment and call anybody out of them name, right? Instantly just block without a warning. All right? I'm telling you, you can do that. So with that said, we're not even going to do too much more long talking, because we don't want no name calling in the comment section. We don't want no farmer disrespect in the comment section, however you may feel about anybody on this platform today. All right? Nice. Other than that, we can have a nice reasoning this evening. So if you haven't shared as yet, please share right now, and so we can get into the conversation. Now, Mr. Vegas is here, like I said, to have a conversation with Mr. Patterson pertaining to the manifesto and him being a viable option for Jamaicans to vote in the next election. Now, Mr. Patterson and the UIC has been becoming a very common name that we've been hearing a lot lately, and we're hearing it a lot more often. And nothing is wrong with popular people like Tanya Stevens, Mr. Vegas, myself, other persons who speaks with the UIC in order to, find out what they're all about and giving you information, right? Now, what Mr. Vegas is doing right now today, I think is very, very, very necessary, because as I mentioned in a live stream the other day, majority Jamaicans don't know what a manifesto is. Majority of Jamaicans don't know what a manifesto is, right? So this right here is very important. So for those of you who never heard of a manifesto, don't know what a manifesto is all about, this right here will give you some information. So I'm going to cut the long talking, and I'm going to introduce, both gentlemen to the conversation right now. And here they go. Mr. Vegas, what on, brother?
Yo, brother. How are you?
Good. It's always good family, and especially when time you all are reasoning.
Of course.
Happy to have you here. And also, Mr. Patterson, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. All right, so I'm just going to be on the sidelines listening in and also just moderating things to make sure that it flows nicely. Mr. Vegas and yourself will be having the conversation mainly. So I'm going to just step aside right now and give Mr. Vegas the floor.
Again, thanks for having me on the program. It's a pleasure speaking with Mr. Patterson. I must apologize. I must apologize for.
Go ahead. Sorry, Vegas.
Yeah, I must apologize to Mr. Patterson and his staff for what happened the last time. It was my bad. I missed the call from his representative, and of such, we did not have the discourse we wanted to have. But of course, I think I gave him enough time to address his manifesto if he had desired to do so. So that is what I really want to speak to him or get a better understanding of his manifesto. Because I think change is necessary, and I would like for someone to challenge the two-party that we have in Jamaica for so many years, that we have grown accustomed to and have gotten so comfortable with just having these two parties, where I think someone, must step in and create some amount of, challenge to the representative of these parties, based on the fact that they may have been taking the Jamaican people for granted. And this what I'm doing here is for Mr. Patterson to be successful in doing so. So when you get among the big boys, someone will already ruffle your feathers, per se. So that is what this is about for me.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that, and I think it's good for a good, healthy governance system for us to have the freedom to have these kind of conversations. There are some countries where you can't ask these kinds of questions. You have to be fearful of what you say about political leaders. We've also seen in Jamaica where there have been cases where persons have spoken up, and they have been roughed up by the authorities, and so on. But we want a Jamaica where people are free to speak, and so I welcome the opportunity to hear your questions, to answer them to the best of my ability, and even question some of your assumptions, because you might make assumptions in your position, and I have to clarify that for our listeners or viewers. So I'm looking forward to a healthy conversation where you dive into our manifesto and help the world to understand it.
With that said, what I'm more concerned about with the manifesto, I'm afraid that in reading the manifesto, I'm afraid that I'm looking at what Jamaica is going to be like, or what's going to happen with Jamaica if a UIC government should take over and you are able to implement all of these changes that you're hoping to make in your governance. I'm a bit afraid of we're looking at a Haiti type of situation, where a lot of sanctions are placed on that country based on the laws that they have implemented over the years, and the outside presence that have challenged those laws. So I'm interested in that side of it. And how are you going to accomplish these things without getting the sanctions and so forth?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, I mean, it's good for us to understand the history of Haiti and the sanctions that it faced with, and I think your concern in terms of, if you're saying that our policies are contrary to international norms, Haiti didn't do anything wrong. Haiti is not deserving of any punishment. Our people in Haiti were very successful in repelling the French and establishing themselves as the first republic in the Caribbean. Unfortunately for the Haitian people, their leaders were not fully aware of how to set up a republic properly, and at the same time they were sanctioned for having successfully secured their freedom. So we don't want to say that one should not seek their freedom because it may come with sanctions. It's very important that we do seek our freedom, our proper freedom, true freedom, and that we learn to effectively deal with any sanctions that come. Now, one of my favorite countries to look at is Singapore, and Singapore was very skillful in transitioning from a third world country to what we call a first world country. You might recall in 1965, they were similarly depressed in terms of their economic numbers, with this similar GDP position, GDP per capita position. But their leader, Lee Kuan Yew, was very diplomatic, very good at negotiating with the colonial powers. And so while they were in the midst of what we know as the Cold War then, where you had, the USSR versus the great United States of America, and people had to kind of pick sides. You might recall the Jamaican government then kind of joined the non-alliance pact and found themselves sort of identifying with communism to some degree, and as a result suffered significant sanctions for having not played the geopolitics correctly. Now we can learn from that. We can learn from how Jamaica back in the 60s, 70s navigated the geopolitics, and how Singapore in the same period navigated the geopolitics. And what Singapore did, which Jamaica should have done, was to make sure that they don't choose any side and don't appear to be choosing any side, but rather deal with the different factions, the different geopolitical factions effectively. In today's day, that will be China and the US. And what you want is a leader that understands geopolitics, understand economics, and is firmly on the side of protecting the rights and freedoms of the Jamaican people. You don't want what we have today, which are politicians who make decisions based on who offers them the most money, whether it be in grants or loans or some combination thereof. As president of the new Jamaica, I'll be leading in a way that protects the interests, not of Jamaica in general, but of all Jamaicans, because I understand the importance of respecting the sovereignty of each Jamaican. And if you do that, you can then protect the entire collective effectively. I've also had a lot of experience working internationally. I've been to Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, other Caribbean islands, and I get an understanding through my travels as an independent citizen, by the way. So I wasn't representing the government or anything like that. So I had a chance to freely mingle and interact with the people of those countries, analyze their political systems and processes, and also the way they think and work. And I'll be applying all of those skills, including my time in the government of Canada, to bring good diplomatic solutions to avoiding sanctions where we can and dealing with others appropriately if we are sanctioned.
Based on what you're saying, I think it is a little bit more than that in terms of when I'm speaking on sanctions, and I understand the Haiti situation, but I don't think it's just about Haiti fought for their freedom and stuff like that. I think we have to look at the Monroe Doctrine and all those areas. Like, for example, if I look at your manifesto at 24, and national defense, we support the maintenance of a sufficient military to defend our country against aggression. We should both avoid entangling alliances and oppose any attempt by any country to act as a policeman for the world. We oppose any form of compulsory national service. So I'm trying to understand what is the message you're sending here, and do you think Jamaica has the military, economic, and political will to go up against the Monroe Doctrine in terms of its position on the geopolitical issues?
Well, we're not trying to go up against the Monroe Doctrine or any such thing. What we're saying is that Jamaica as a people must be prepared to defend themselves, and we must prepare ourselves to be a strong country in terms of not just sitting back and saying we're going to rely on any other country to defend us. Of course, we're going to have to recognize the fact that we're not a superpower, we're not a military power, but we can become a formidable force right here in the Caribbean, not as an agent of trouble for, let's say, the US or any other country, but rather focused on protecting the interests of the Jamaican people. Once again, I have to draw on the skills of the one of my favorite persons, Lee Kuan Yew. You know, Singapore is the size of St. Thomas, but they have a massive army, you know, in terms of military technology, and they're able to defend themselves quite well. Of course, maybe even long enough until they can get additional support from, you know, other countries interested in freedom. And so I'm just saying the Jamaican government under UIC will recognize and plan for and develop our capacity to defend ourselves as a nation. So what is written there could be taken out of context, or it could be used as a springboard for any kind of intervention by an outside force. But it'll be very hard for us to do that based on the moral authority on which our manifesto stands, which is very much in line with the founding fathers of the US and the constitution that they tried to create, which was one that's based on countries having their sovereignties, individual having their sovereignties, and a world where freedom, as opposed to totalitarianism or dictatorship, is embraced.
So primarily, are you saying Jamaica will be a non-aligned state based on not taking any sides?
Jamaica,
geopolitical spheres.
Yeah, Jamaica
wouldn't that be detrimental to the economy? And I understand that you're trying to model Jamaica off the whole Singapore, way at which they achieve what you're saying. But was it without the help of the Occidental?
No. Well, first of all, I'm not modeling Jamaica after Singapore. What I've done is to look at countries around the world and picked things that are pragmatically sensible for Jamaica. So, for example, you see a small European country like the Netherlands being the second largest exporter of food. And you say, my God, if they can do that, why can't Jamaica? And the more I look at their system and see how they have done it, I say, whoa, we can do this here. We have everything and more than what they have. And they're the second largest producer of agricultural outputs at 95 billion a year. So here it is. Singapore has done some things very, very well, and we can, copy what they have done and use that. Now, in terms of the being non-aligned or aligned, I prefer to make sure that Jamaica remains flexible and build relationships with countries as opposed to talking about being aligned. I want us to be able to talk comfortably with China, talk comfortably with the US, talk comfortably with Russia, and make sure that whatever agreements we enter, whatever reciprocal trade agreements we design, that it's done in the context of what you see there in our manifesto, to protect the interest of the Jamaican people and never violating the sovereignty of a single Jamaican.
You spoke of Netherlands and their labor market, yeah, and how they were able to achieve, what you just spoke about. But if I look at 19 on your manifesto, the labor market section, employment and compensation agreements between private employers and employees are outside the scope of the government, and these contracts should not be encumbered by government mandated benefits or social engineering. We support the right of private employers and employees to choose whether or not to bargain with each other through a labor union. Bargaining should be free of government interference, such as compulsory arbitration or imposing any obligation to bargain. So wouldn't this be private employees taking advantage of the marketplace? And how are we going to be able to accomplish what you just spoke on, per se, the Netherlands and so forth? How are you going to accomplish this if we have private business controlling the price, controlling the marketplace,
right? So
price, if the government cannot interfere with this?
Well, first of all, when we talk about private and we talk about market, you need to understand that you're talking about citizens. So when we talk about the market and the private enterprise, you're talking about individuals being able to make their own choices. We are the private sector, every single citizen. What we don't want is what we currently have, which is you give politicians the power to manipulate the market in favor of big business in the name of helping the poor. So they tell us that their goal is to help the poor, and they tell us that the regulations they're putting in place is going to do just that, when in fact what it does is to suppress small businesses and micro businesses and give big business the upper hand. You make the environment very cumbersome, you make the compliance requirements very difficult, And the ultimate outcome of all of that is more people underemployed or unemployed or underpaid and so on. I'll give you another example, again from Singapore. Singapore does not have a minimum wage law, and Singapore does not interfere with the employment process in the way that we have now guarded against. And what is the end result of that? The end result is a massively highly educated, very competent, and highly paid citizenry, to the point where Singapore has to now import labor to do its menial job. So any job which you would consider menial, Singapore has to be importing people to do that, because their citizens have now risen to a tremendously high level in terms of their salaries. So you have very high salaries in Singapore, very high competencies, very high production, and it goes against the grain of what you're insinuating. You're thinking that the way for us to bring up employment and bring up wages and bring fairness to the marketplace is to have human beings, politicians like ourselves, having the power to meddle with the arrangements that citizens may make with other citizens, because these are citizens. If I own a business, I own B Suite Jamaica, and I am employing someone, I say, I would like to employ you. Here's what I'm offering. Would you like to take the job? And the person says yes or no, they want to take the job. That's not business controlling prices. That is people deciding on prices. That is me, the buyer, and you, the seller, deciding if we're going to agree on a particular price. And as a result of that, you now have the market doing what it should do. It indicates to you and me what we should invest our time and energy in. So, for example, if you see that callaloo sell really hot because the price of callaloo is up, and you're seeing the indications of what that's telling the market, you decide to switch from potatoes to planting callaloo, because price is simply a communication. Price is nothing more than a communication. For example, right now, Jamaicans are suffering from inflation, even though we have a government that has full control of the economy and is able to meddle with any aspect of it. Why then do we have high inflation and high prices? Because we don't have the market being able to set the price of goods and services, and we don't have the market being able to adjust inflation, and we don't have the market being able to adjust interest rate. We have a central bank with the power to do that, and we have a government that can oversupply liquidity in the market and cause the inflations which we're now seeing. So we have to be careful that we don't ask for something that might be even more disastrous than the one that we've been taught to be disastrous.
But I hear what you're saying, but what I'm really asking though, based on employment and compensation agreements between private employers and employees outside the scope of the government. So if that is the case, and based on what you're saying about the workers and Singapore and so forth, wouldn't the private employees take advantage of the people that they're employing? If the government, if it is outside of the scope of the government, and you're saying if a man is offering a man that for a job, yeah, it is between those two persons or those two entities or subjects. I'm saying to you, wouldn't the how do we protect the workers? How do we protect the workers if the private employers, are taking advantage of your mandate?
Sorry, just a second. 1 second.
Welcome to everybody who is tuning in right now. We have Mr. Viegas as well as the UIC president, Mr. Joseph L. Patterson, with us in a conversation. Now, listen, like I said earlier, this conversation is very, very much important to every Jamaican to know what a manifesto is and what a manifesto is all about. And this right here, what Mr. Viegas is doing is awesome, because he is breaking down step by step, each thing in the UIC's manifesto, and giving Mr. Patterson the opportunity to give us a better understanding of what could happen or what will happen based on the UIC's manifesto. All right. So I want everybody here, and I must say thank you so much to everybody who is here, who is keeping it respectful in the comment section and not being disrespectful and not being childish. Thank you so much for that. And to everyone that has already shared out the program, thank you so much. All right, Mr. P, you ready?
Yes.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I hear that there's some problems on the other feed that's going through to our followers over there. So sorry, I have no control over it. But back to the question of Mr. Vega. So there are some assumptions that are being made, and the assumption is that employers can take advantage of employees if the employees are allowed to make their own decisions. So the assumption is that employees
and the employers as well. We're not just talking about the employees, we're talking about the employers, because based on what is written here in the manifesto, it's basically saying employment and compensation agreements between private employers and employees are outside the scope of the government, and these contracts should not be encumbered by government mandated benefits of social engineering. So, so I just want to understand there, wouldn't this be an opportunity for private employers to take advantage of the workers?
No, it isn't. It would be an opportunity for employers and employees not to be manipulated by politicians. So the opportunity is to get rid of the politicians from manipulating either side. And normally the manipulation is to support big business against small business. So what you are afraid of, what they've taught us in school and what they've taught us through the news media, is that you must be afraid to negotiate your own price, not having somebody else out there, a third party, without any responsibility either to pay you or to find the money to pay you or to deal with your personal responsibilities, a third party who is now going to influence that relationship, and it's supposed to turn out to be in your favor. But no, in a true market economy where you do not have big business being able to pay politicians to make regulations to suit them, what you have is supply and demand. Each and every member of society is free to choose who they're going to work for and how much they're going to work for. Now, in a low skilled job, a job which is very low skilled, which you can easily find people to work in because it's such a low skilled job, the price of that job is going to be very low naturally because almost anybody can do it. As you go up the ladder in terms of complexity, you now have a lot of price differential, which is now going to come down to how competent a person is, how much in demand is that particular position, and how valuable that person is to the company in question. And now you're going to have price differentiation. The more you have government getting involved, the more now you start to have built-in inefficiencies. Persons are able to lock themselves into jobs even though they're not performing very well, and employers are in a position to use the regulations, for example, to stifle some markets, so they control the best people but have a lower price for that market because of the government manipulations. We're getting rid of all of that and opening the market fully so that a contract is a contract. You can freely engage in designing a contract with your employer based on what you want and vice versa. Now, what you're afraid of is the fact that you think that the employer is so big, the employer is so big that they're going to be able to have unfair positions. But no, you're assuming that the person has no other alternative. And you're assuming that there wouldn't be other competitors who want those good employees. So once you have now a market where this one employer wants to be the big bad bully, he now faces a competitor who understands the market better and is able to better compensate and entice the best in the market. And that now pulls those employees over there. And that now creates the kind of outcome which we want, which is a high value environment for employees, a merit-based system where people are progressing because of how good they are, not because of either regulations favoring them or politicians manipulating a market for them, because somebody behind the scene who fund their campaign is able to drive those regulations to get those market conditions. So we understand this very fully, and that is why we're designing it this way, to have a truly transparent and open market. If If now somebody tries to abuse the contract relationship, that goes to court and you have resolutions very quickly, because in our system, no matter how rich or poor you are, let me say it the other way, no matter how poor you are, you will have full access to the courts, because it's not based on how much money you have, it's based on a public service in the judicial process.
So does that mean you'll be getting rid of the labor union?
No. If you read it carefully,
What will the labor what will be the duty of the labor union?
no,
If
we're
we have,
not
if we have,
we're not defining the duty of the labor union. We're allowing you, the citizens, to decide if you want a labor union and what you want that labor union to do on your behalf. So you're free. Employees are free to choose their unions. They're free to design their unions the way they want it, but it won't be in legislation. The government won't be saying this is what labor unions should do or shouldn't do. As long as the labor union does not use force or fraud, it is free to, with the permission of their members, to do what needs to be done to influence the outcomes of the negotiations.
so let's say the employer, a company is paying below the minimum wage. What should be done in that regard?
Well, in a UIC world, there will be no minimum wage, because the minimum wage is a very dangerous and counterproductive tool. It is used to get votes. It sounds good on paper. It entices people to vote for politicians who, like we're seeing now, come out and say 12,000. A minimum wage simply serves to set an artificial price. And when you have artificial price, there are unintended consequences. One of those unintended consequences is a mass amount of youth unemployment, which then becomes permanent unemployment. Why is that so? A person will not be able to get more in a marketplace than his productive capacity. So if you set an artificial price, all it does is make it illegal to hire him at any other price below that. It then robs him of the one tool he has, which is to say, I am willing to work for less in order to get it. Where people have a problem with minimum wage, that they think a minimum wage should pay a person who is, let's say, 40 years old and have 3 kids. Nobody 40 years old who have 3 kids should be expecting to live off a Burger King salary. So we have a problem there. We have created a situation where we're allowing adults to think that a job that should be for a teenager who is at home with his parents, going to school, and want to work part-time to have money to take out his girlfriend, buy a few things that he want, maybe even save some money to invest in his own education. And suddenly a job like that, which is a burger flipping job, which should be a job for a kid, 17, 18, 19, not an adult, not a mother, not a father, not a parent. And we have gotten people to believe in the silly idea that a job like that should pay enough to take care of a family. That is ridiculous. That only pushes up the price of the burger. And as a result, it changes the dynamics where more and more people who are doing those jobs are at the wrong age and the wrong stage of their lives. And we lock people into low-end, dead-end jobs. We need to change the psychology and start encouraging every citizen to work on earning their maximum potential. And the first way to do that is to give them the proper signal that government is not going to try to arrange things just so that you get a particular salary to feed a family of 3 or 4, but rather government's job is to give you an empowering environment, an enabling environment, so that you will learn, earn, and grow, so that you're moving through a continuum of earning potentials. So what you earned at 17, which let's say we call that minimum wage now, is not what you're earning at 25. And what you earn at 25 is not what you're earning at 35. Why? Because you should be growing. You should be moving through the process and growing up the ladder of life, as opposed to getting yourself stuck in a situation where you have 3 kids and you're working at Burger King and you're getting whatever they call minimum wage at the time, or slightly more than that. And then you're asking the government to step in and change that. Let's teach our people true economics and teach our people how to be as productive and proficient as possible, and let the system work the way it should work, as a price signal to tell you where you should target your energy and focus, and then build the people up from there. Not these artificial things being done by government, which, by the way, works powerfully for big business because it allows them to use this artificial price barrier to keep down many people and let them be the focus. The barometer is minimum wage as the measure. And they use that now to suppress wages across the board, which they've done in Jamaica, and keep many people at lower level income because they're not allowing a true market price to take its effect, which would allow those who are most productive to be earning higher and those who are less productive to be motivated to become more productive so that they can earn higher, as opposed to looking to government as the trigger.
Mr.
Right.
P, let me ask a question, if I may, Vegas.
Mhm.
What about the company that would then say, you know what, there is no minimum wage,
Right.
so I'm going to underpay someone. You know,
Yes.
Before you answer that, Mr. Patterson, it's a good question, Unstoppable. Are you going to stop the influx of foreigners, case in point, the Chinese, from coming into Jamaica and working?
Let me answer the first question because it's related to the
Right,
second.
I just want to tie
Yeah,
both of them.
sure. So the first part of the question is, what would stop let's say there's no minimum wage. What would stop a company from, right now in Jamaica, minimum wage is, let's round it off, $7,000. There are different ones for different, sector and industry and all kind of foolishness. But let's say you have $7,000, and that $7,000 can't feed a family. $7,000 is a small amount of money, fit for a person working, a kid, 17, 16 years old, working at a supermarket, packing bags as part of his life journey, and he's getting $7,000. Mommy and daddy paying the light bill, generally speaking, and putting groceries on the table. So that's not going to feed his family, but it is giving him a chance to learn how to be a productive citizen. He's learning how to take directions. He's learning how to work with teams. He's learning how to deal with customers and so on. Great. If that's not there, what would the employer offer him? The employer has to offer him a price that would induce him to leave his video game and the couch to come out and work for them to pack those bags. If the price is too low, when he compares the price versus what he could do with his free time, he'll make a decision on that. So the employer, if he needs him, will have to adjust the price accordingly. Now, let's say there's somebody working for the employer and you think that they're now going to be able to drop the rate below minimum wage. They can drop it all they want. A smarter company will hire that person if they're any good. So he's going to lose his best employees to smart companies who know that, listen, I can't offer 7,000 or whatever for this particular position. I need to go up. And so you're going to have a competitive market. Case in point, right now, even though there's a minimum wage, many Jamaicans earn more than minimum wage because some will never leave their house for that.
I'm going to allow you to answer Mr. Vegas's question, but I just want to stress this, though. I understand what your response was, but my specific question, right?
Yes.
A company is going to want to save more money than pay out more. So if they have employees and there is no minimum wage, now bear in mind, I would think a minimum wage is set to protect employees from being underpaid. So if an employee is being paid and they're not getting what they should get, then they could cry out and say, listen, this is minimum wage, I should be getting that or more. If there is no minimum wage, no laws that the employee could say, all right, then you're going against the law right here and you're paying me less than what I know I deserve. Wouldn't that be a problem? That's the question I'm asking.
Right. No, it's not a problem. The employee would quit and go to a company who offers them more. You're assuming that there's one company and no other alternatives. Right now in Santa Cruz alone, you have 3 major supermarkets, and then you have some minor ones as well in Santa Cruz. Any one of them that chooses to pay, and right now many of their employees get minimum wage or a little bit more than minimum wage. And the best employees, even in the same category, gets even more than that because the employer wants to keep them. So any employer which goes down, they're going to lose those employees. But remember, we're talking, first of all, in the current environment. The current environment, There are many other factors which are being used to stifle the job market or being used to stifle employees. But in a truly free environment, what you have are many options, and they're popping up every day because you don't have suppression. Right now, small businesses in Jamaica are suppressed. Micro enterprises are suppressed. So because you have suppression, you have less opportunities. The more opportunities you have, the more options employees will have, and the more you'll be able to better negotiate your price. What we have is an artificial system which makes us feel in our minds that we have protection, but in fact, what it is doing is oppressing the Jamaican people. It just sounds good. You have a minimum wage to say this is the minimum and you are protected. You're not protected because the minimum wage is actually zero. They simply don't employ you. And we have a lot of people who are at zero right now. You could set the minimum wage to 12,000 tomorrow. You'll have a lot of people at zero. If we don't fix the full problem, which I have tried to allude to, if you don't fix the full problem and you simply talk about your setting minimum wage, all you're doing is increasing the pool of unemployed, making them permanently unemployed the longer they stay out of the labor market until we get to where we are today with higher and higher crime rates.
So to the question of the foreigners working in the country, how would you address that?
Well, first of all, there should be no favorable treatment given to foreign nationals coming into the country like we're doing now. Right now, the government is giving favorable tax treatment to, and I'm not going to call any particular ethnic group, just generally, they give favorable tax treatment to competitors coming into the space.
Yeah. I understand, Mr. Patterson, and for the interest of time, I think we have a lot to go over. But what I'm asking is, what would you do about foreigners like the Chinese coming into Jamaica to work?
Right. So what I'm explaining to you is that we will not be giving them any favorable treatments. And when it comes on to,
would there be any form of gap? Or the
Jamaica will have an immigration policy, and so any company that wants to bring in persons into the country has to justify bringing those people into the country. So the government has to look at what is the purpose of somebody coming in from any country, whichever ethnicity or race there might be, and it cannot be that you are getting a chance to come in and compete with Jamaican labor that's available. Take, for example, even in the entertainment industry, you have currently where people are able to bring in entertainers to do what Jamaicans are capable of doing and are ready to do, and they're being given special treatment to come into the country and take over the entertainment space, for example. So these are the kind of things that you do not want to have government politicians being able to play games with the Jamaican people.
So will you put a cap on foreigners and the amount of work they can?
No, it will be a matter of the person who is applying for bringing in persons to make the case.
I think you understand where I'm going with this, because based on what you're saying, you're saying if there you're going to remove what we were just discussing. So if you're gonna remove that which is already there, wouldn't it be like the Chinese or like the Spanish people and whosoever? Wouldn't it be in their interest or the company's interest to bring in those people and they work for less than the minimum wage?
No, they can't. No, you can't bring. Remember, talking about immigration, you're no longer talking about labor relations within the country. You're talking about immigration now. So,
right. So would you set a price, a wage gap for foreigners, or would it still be employees and employers can negotiate their own destiny? That's basically.
Yeah. We will not be setting any prices.
Right. So if the Chinese or the Spanish decide that they're going to come into the country and work for less, wouldn't that create more unemployment?
Yeah, you hear me, Vegas?
Yes.
All right, sorry there, Mr. Patterson. All right, let's do it in a way where we can ask the question and get the answers instead of cutting off each other. All right, so Vegas, ask the question straight out.
Right. So what I'm saying is, if there is no minimum wage, based on what we're saying, if there's no minimum wage, and you're saying someone can negotiate with another company. If you don't want to pay me this price, I'm going to go to another company. But what if people can come into the country and work for that price that the company is willing to offer? Are you going to put a stoppage to that to say you cannot work for that price that the Jamaican people are refusing to work for? That is what I'm trying to understand.
Right. And I'm trying to tell you that now you're talking about immigration. So the answer is any company who wants to bring in workers from outside, they have to make a case for bringing in those workers from outside. We're not going to set the price. They have to make a case. So let's say they need an engineer in aerospace technology, and we have no engineers here in Jamaica. They've put out an ad, they've advertised for the position, and nobody in Jamaica has applied for the aerospace position. And so they said, based on these results, we're applying to be able to bring in an aerospace person. All we'll be doing is authorizing the immigration aspect of this, right? Not setting the price of it. Now, if you go down to a minimum wage job now, you're now saying the person is putting out a minimum wage job. We're looking for people to flip burger. They put an ad out and 1,000 person applies. And then they come to us and say they can't find anybody. They have 1,000 applications, but they can't find anybody. There'll be really no justification for the government to approve an immigration visa for somebody to come in for a job that 1,000 Jamaicans have applied for, unless they can show with irrefutable proof that these 1,000 persons, even though they apply, they really can't flip a burger.
Can I speak? I'm not
sure.
Yeah,
but I'm finished. Yeah, I've answered. Yeah.
I really want to move on from this topic, but I think it is this part of the manifesto, but I think it is very important for us to understand what's going on here. If you look at what is going on with even in America, with people crossing the border, and we hear it all the time, the work that people are not willing to do, or the price that people are not willing to accept. People are coming into the country through immigration and accepting these prices. And of such, there's arguments that there is an increase in unemployment. So a small country like Jamaica, with 2.5 to 3 million people, if foreigners are coming in and willing to work for what we're not willing to work for, wouldn't that increase unemployment? That's what I need to get a yes or a no from, basically.
No, but you're asking. You see, you're not asking the question correctly. You're now comparing us to America, where they have a large border with Mexico, which is unsecured, and people
I'm
are
just giving you an analogy.
Yeah. No, so Jamaica doesn't have that problem. We don't have a problem where people are crossing our border without us being able to manage that. So if somebody wants to come into Jamaica to work, they have to apply. And if they're going to apply, it has to be based on a need. And if that need is there, then it will be approved. If that need is not there, it will not be approved. So I think that answers the question. You're now trying to deal with a price issue. We're saying we're not going to be setting prices. We're not going to set the price that if you employ this person from outside Jamaica, here's the price you need to pay them. No, we're not going to do that. What we're doing is saying, show us proof that you cannot find a Jamaican available to do this job. And that should be very easy. You put out an ad, we see how many persons apply for it, you show the qualification, and you show us the evidence of the interviews to say they're not qualified or competent to flip the burger. And so these people that are lower than minimum wage, we're going to import them, which of course would be ridiculous. But I'm just saying that's the nature of the game. That's how we're going to be dealing with it.
Let's look at economic liberty, so we can piggyback off that.
Yes.
Uniters want all members of society to have abundant opportunities to achieve economic success. A free and competitive market allocates resources in the most efficient manner. Each person has the right to offer goods and services to others in the free market. The only proper role of the government in economic realm is to protect property rights and adjudicate disputes. Is not what and provide a legal framework in which voluntary trade is protected. All efforts by the government to redistribute wealth or to control or manage trade are improper in a free society. So if this is what will be implemented, wouldn't the merchants be able to flood the market with imported cheap products in a free market?
Okay, so you kind of jumped there a bit from what you were reading to merchants flooding the market with
No,
cheap
I'm
products.
asking.
Right. Well, no, merchants will not be able to just flood the local market with cheap products. But let's step back a second. Let's
Mhm.
say merchants are free to flood the market with cheap products. What does that mean? What does it really mean? It means that Jamaicans are buying products at a price that is cheaper than they otherwise would get it for. Why would you have a problem with, if they want that product, if that product is wanted by the Jamaican people, they want to buy it, why would you be opposed to them being able to get it for a cheaper price? Why would you want them to pay a higher price for it?
So you're saying if anyone can decide what they sell for in the market.
Of course. I mean,
So everyone
a,
can decide the price that they price on their goods or
yeah,
the product.
in a free society, yes, which is what we want. We want a free society. So you, Mr. Vegas, is free to charge whatever you want for the products you produce and want to sell, or you buy and want to sell. And I am free to buy and sell the product I want to sell. All of us, all 2.9 million of us, would be free to offer our services or sell our products at the price that we think best, provided somebody else want to buy it and we can't use force or fraud to get them to buy it.
So you wouldn't care if someone imports goods into the country and is selling it cheaper than the farmers in Jamaica.
Absolutely not. We're not opposed to somebody importing anything into Jamaica that is not going to kill somebody. So it's not, what we're going to do as a government is to create an environment that will now allow our farmers to be competitive. We're going to create an environment that allow our entertainers to be competitive. We're going to create an environment that allows all the different sectors to be competitive. Right now we have an environment which doesn't do that. It makes it hard for Jamaicans to produce and easy for them to import.
So you're saying so the farmers in Jamaica and the products that are made in Jamaica that may cost more to make or more to plant these products. It's not an issue if someone or the merchants are importing cheaper goods into the country and competing with the farmers and the persons who are creating products in Jamaica.
Your premise is wrong, sir. Are you saying that Jamaica has to produce things at a higher cost than other people?
I know for a fact that the farmers, it takes more resources to harvest or to plant some of these crops in Jamaica than what can be imported into the country.
So our goal should be to ensure we have an environment where Jamaica has a competitive advantage in some things. We're not going to have a competitive advantage in everything. So we're not going to be able to produce everything at a competitive price. So what you want is an environment that allows Jamaicans to find their competitive space and to succeed in those spaces. So the reason why countries should import normally, you import because somebody else is better able to produce this than you. And then you export to them what you're better able to produce than them. So for example, Jamaica could be a grand tourist, just for example, a grand tourist destination because of what we have to offer. So we export this product by having tourists come here and buy this product because we're better at it, we're good at it, or entertainment or whatever. While we need to buy phones because we don't produce it and we have not figured out how to do that effectively. Now, what you're trying to set up is a moral argument that suggests that government is supposed to make sure that even though we're not competitive in a particular product line, that government should block the Jamaican people from accessing that product line at a cheaper price in order to protect the local industry. We don't buy into that. What we buy into is empowering the Jamaican people to produce competitively in the spaces that they can produce competitively and then do so. And you import what you can't produce competitively. We don't want to set up a tug of war between import export. We want to set up a dynamic environment that allows us to export more than or as much as we import so that we have a good balance of trade.
Are you cognizant of what happened in Haiti with the rice farming?
Yes.
But wouldn't this be a similar situation?
No. Again, Haiti has not implemented a system like what the UIC is talking about. So if you want good results from your people, you have to enable your people. So the UIC, for example, instead of doing what you're proposing, we're going to invest in our human capital so that we have a very bright Jamaica, a very competent Jamaica, a very effective citizenry, as opposed to just playing around with protective means, which in the end simply result in us locking in inefficiency and never achieving our full potential. I don't want that, and nobody should want that if they understand economics. So what we're going to do is to make sure that the children of Jamaica are properly nourished, properly educated, properly housed, and as a result of that, become very effective and highly productive and efficient contributors to the Jamaican economy.
Let's move on from there a little bit. Crime is one of the major things that I think is being talked about presently in Jamaica. I see where you're saying we, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and uphold. Let me go a little bit further up. Excuse me. So, statements of principles. We, the members of the United Independent Congress, hereby challenge the moral authority of the omnipotent state and defend the inherent rights of every individual to be free. We hold that all individuals have the right to exercise sole dominion over their own lives and have the right to live in whatever manner they choose, so long as they do not forcibly interfere with the equal rights of others to live in whatever manner they choose. Government throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals and the fruits of their labor. All political parties, except for the UIC, grant to government the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent. Would this be something that the gang members and people who are partaking in illegal activities, wouldn't this be something that they welcome?
Absolutely not. How would they welcome it? We're saying that the government of Jamaica must respect the sovereignty of the individual. We're not saying that the government of Jamaica should protect criminals. A criminal is somebody who is trying to violate the sovereignty of another person by either taking their life or taking away their freedom or taking away their property. And the UIC system, if you read down further, makes it very clear that we protect the sovereignty of every citizen. And so the purpose of government is to make sure we have a very effective police service that will protect that sovereignty, protect your life, your liberty, your property. We want a government that provides a safe environment, a clean environment, an orderly environment with the proper public infrastructure that we can do our best, and we can do that feeling secure. So no criminal will like this system.
So how would you stop criminals or people who are partaking in illegal activities from benefiting from their proceeds if the state has the right to this? Government throughout history have regularly operated on the opposite principle, that the state has the right to dispose of the lives of individuals without the fruit of their labor. You're saying basically individuals have the right to regulate the lives of individuals and seize the fruits of their labor without their consent. So how would you know, how would you stop criminals from partaking in the benefits?
Okay, it's a so let's back up here. So what you have just read a while ago is talking about the relationship between government and a law-abiding citizen. And now you want to talk about the relationship between the government and a citizen who wants to use force and fraud to deny others their rights. The role of government is to have a police service that apprehends and convict such persons and have them pay the price for wanting to violate the rights of others. That does not conflict with having the government respecting those citizens who want to enjoy the fruits of their labor. The problem you're having is that the current system of governance doesn't operate under the rule of law, which should be objective. It operates under the rule of whenever you elect a new government, they can kind of do whatever they kind of want and make up new rules and new laws and apply them as they see fit whenever. We say no to that. We want a standard set of rules. We call it the rule of law, which are objective, that makes it very clear that the government doesn't own you. The government doesn't have the right to tax you at will. There will be limits, the hard limit on taxation. The government doesn't have the right to just regulate the way your life. So, okay, today I feel like we say nobody should have sugar, nobody should have salt. No, those are your personal choices. The government is there to protect your life from criminals. People want to murder you, from those who want to enslave you. If anybody wants to force you into slavery, or anybody who wants to steal your property, whether that property is money or other physical assets, or even steal your body, so to speak. So I think because of the way we have been trained, when we hear certain things, it sounds strange to us because we're used to a colonial model of governance where it's almost as if we are slaves and the government is the master and they can do with us as they please for the most part. The UIC says no, that has to stop. We must put solid boundaries between government and the individual. Crooks, on the other hand, those who want to use force, that's violence, right? Or those who want to use fraud, deception, for example, misleading advertisement, that's where the government gets in. We make sure that anybody who tries to use force or fraud to get their way in society, those are who the government goes after. Those who want to just enjoy a peaceful life, leave them alone. Let them enjoy themselves, enjoy the fruits of their labor.
We, on the contrary, deny the right of any government to do these things and to hold what, where government exists, they must not violate the rights of any individual, namely the right to life. Accordingly, we support the prohibition of the initiation of physical force against others. Can you expound a little bit on this? Are you saying the government will not be initiating any physical force against others, meaning the citizens, people who are suspected of, or the government are trying to take control of situations?
No. So the word there that you need to focus on is initiate. So there are two types of force. There is force where you are defending yourself, or in the case of the state is defending an innocent citizen. So the police has the right to respond to situations where a person is being threatened or a person is being attacked. So the state use retaliatory force. The state must not initiate force, meaning you, the citizen, you're not doing anything. You're not violating the law that says you cannot use force or fraud to get your way with other citizens. So you're not doing that. And the state now comes and initiate force, right? Such as you're peacefully demonstrating and the state comes and lock you up because they're like, no, we don't want you to be able to demonstrate unless you come and get a permit from us. That is wrong. But in terms of retaliatory force, meaning gangs who are trying to terrorize people, or somebody who is trying to beat up his wife, or whatever it is, the state now, that's where you only have the right to use force when you are retaliating. You're stopping somebody else from using unlawful force against somebody else. So the word there is initiate. No one, not even the government, should be allowed to initiate force. For example, let's say you don't like me. You don't have the right to initiate force, come and punch me. That would be initiating force. If you try to punch me, I would have the right by law to retaliate and make sure I defend myself and punch you first or shoot you first, for example, to defend myself. But I wouldn't have the right to come and initiate force against you. You don't have the right to initiate force against me, nor does the government has the right to initiate force against anyone. It only has the right or responsibility to retaliate against someone who's trying to use force, threatening to use force against somebody else to protect your right to your life, your liberty, or your property. So we're really putting the government in its rightful place and stop allowing it this excessive power to do things to citizens which it should never be able to do.
So you mentioned someone demonstrating. So what if it's a situation of the government has to mandate certain rules or protocols in terms of a disaster risk management situation? Are you saying people who are demonstrating, like, for example, what happened in your situation, are you saying people who are disobedient during that time, there should be no force used to disperse people from going against that order?
So first of all, they wouldn't be disobedient because we're not required to obey the government if they're doing something wrong. So the government, in the case of a natural disaster or a medical emergency, it still doesn't have the right to initiate force. It has the right to educate, and it has the right to inform, and it has the right to propose and suggest. Okay, and then the person's now within their own right, as long as the citizen is not initiating force. So let's say you have demonstrators, and those demonstrators are destroying public property, threatening the lives of others. They're going to fight with people. Then the government has a right to step in to stop them violating the rights of somebody else. But if they're simply going to be demonstrating to call attention to a national issue, to say this is wrong. So, for example, suppose the so-called emergency that the government is trying to tell us about is a fake emergency. Let's say it's a fake emergency. Other citizens are aware that it's a fake emergency. Some are not aware, and some want to call attention to the fakeness of it and say, listen, we're going to hold up placards and tell the world that we know that this is a fake emergency. The government must not have the right to suppress those persons, but intervene if those persons use that opportunity to violate the life, the liberty, or property rights of any other citizen.
So you're saying, if you were prime minister now and you implemented a disaster risk management act, and people decide that they want to go out there and demonstrate against you having lockdowns or whatever the situation, the protocols based on the health minister recommendation or the health ministry recommendation, you're saying people who are demonstrating and going out against the protocols, there would be no force used against them towards such movements?
Absolutely. And there are two parts to it. One, if what you just said is the case, where not me or anybody who does that, based on the new Jamaica, that prime minister and that government would have broken the law. So you can't do that. You cannot implement any protocol that takes away freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of association, freedom of choice. So anything that the government does that takes away your freedoms would be considered unconstitutional. The government can only impose laws that respects the sovereignty of the citizen and prevents any citizen from using force or fraud against another citizen. And itself, the government is not permitted to use force or fraud against the citizens. So if the citizens see the government using initiated force, not retaliatory force, but initiative force or fraud, they have a right actually to rise up against the government. Because they would have known that the government has violated the Constitution. The purpose of a properly written Constitution is to protect the people from their government, not to protect the government from the people.
What do you understand from the Disaster Risk Management Act? What do you understand?
When you say what I understand, what do you mean?
Yeah, what is it for? What is it for? Do you think it is something that Andrew Holness just came up with, or is something that the House voted on?
No, it doesn't matter if the House vote on a law. For example, if the House vote on slavery and say we should enslave everybody that is my height and my color and my DNA, that doesn't make it right. It simply means that a group of people have made a law which is unjust and wrong. So a law in and of itself doesn't make it just. So the DRMA is a bad law, whether it was passed by Andrew Holness or by the PNP before him or by both of them coming together and doing it. Any law in the Jamaica that we want to create that violates the fundamental rights of Jamaicans must and will be wrong.
So you have no problem in managing the disaster if there should be a disaster in your administration?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, managing a disaster doesn't mean you have to be a dictator. So if the UIC was in government when we have this medical emergency, the UIC approach would have been very different. We would have called together a council, a public emergency council, including the leaders of all the other political parties, recognizing that in the case of an emergency, a real emergency, national emergency, it must not be political. So you have to get rid of any appearance of political by making sure you have all the people at the table. Right. Then you give them the information so they have transparency. Then you take an objective approach to finding out what is really happening and what are the proposed solutions. And then you make sure that those proposed solutions do not violate the rights and freedoms of the people. Then you proceed now to educate the people and provide public support so that the people can take the measures necessary that you would have identified for them and help them to understand, to then protect their lives and their livelihoods. But not having a dictatorship in place. That's not what you need.
But Mr. Patterson, if
Yes.
there is an outbreak under your watch and you are putting protocols in place and people are going against the protocols you put in place and decide that they're going to, case in point, let's say what's going on now, whether you believe that COVID is real, yes or no. But let's say there's a mask mandate and people decide that they do not want to wear masks. Are you saying there should be no force or no laws put in place to stop such behavior?
No, I'm saying there should not be a mask mandate. There should be, if the government using an objective, transparent, and inclusive process, meaning not a political one, an inclusive process, if they determine that, you know what, the best recommendation is that you wear a mask, that you wash your hands, you stand 6 feet apart, and so on and so forth. You recommend that to the people and you give justification for it, and the people will choose whether or not they wish to comply with that, because
So
that is a hold on, that is a law about their personal. It's not a law. That is an issue about their personal choices. The laws must be around any one of those persons using force or fraud against somebody else. So for example, if I know I have a communicable disease, I know, we're not guessing now, I know, and I come over and knowingly transfer that communicable disease to you, then I have broken a law. But to tell me that I must now, you're going to lock me up if you tell me how I can take care of my health, and I choose not to do it because you're saying the way I take care of my health might affect somebody else's health, even though you have no proof that I've done anything contrary to that, but you're now going to criminalize me prior, then you have broken the basic fundamental laws of individual sovereignty, and a UIC government would never tolerate that.
All right. So let's speak on it from a different angle then. Let's say like what the government is doing now with Zozo, and you're saying people, there's a curfew, and people decide that, oh, I have my constitutional right, I'm not adhering to what the government implemented in this mission or whatever to stop crime or reduce crime. You're saying people should just do whatever.
No, I'm not saying people should do whatever. I'm saying the government has no right to implement a curfew. The government has no right to take away your right to freedom of movement on any pretext. It doesn't have any right to do. It has a right to tell you that right now there's a hotspot in Tivoli or in Savlamar or in Santa Cruz. We have an upturn in murders or rapes or whatever, and it informs you about the situation, tells you what it is doing about the situation, but it has no right to stop you from traveling.
Even if it's in the best interest of national security?
No, hold on. When you say in the best interest of national security, what do you mean? Who decides what's in the best interest of national security? 63 men and women that happen to be elected, they say that the best interest of national security is to take away the rights of a subset of people, for example, to say we're going to violate the rights of this subset because we think it is in the best interest of society. Absolutely not. That is why you need to read our manifesto carefully, because what it does is put a check on government. The government's role is to protect your sovereignty and our collective sovereignty. So if there's people coming to invade our country, it has an army that it says we're going to fight the enemies coming in. Within the country, if there's a person, any one of us who wants to use force or fraud to take what belongs to somebody else, be it their life, their freedom, or their property, the government steps in and crushes that and say, no, you can't do that. But it does not give the government the right to say, we have observed a potential problem, and to solve that problem, we need to take away your rights to do that. Absolutely not.
So you're against Zozo?
No, well, if you define Zozo as the government going in and doing remedial actions for wrongs that it had committed against the people. So over the last 78 years, they have created garrison communities, and they have funded gangs, and they have given contracts to dons and so on to win elections, and now they have messed up the society, and now they have to go in and try to do remedial actions. Then of course you have to do remedial actions. The UIC, for example, has a remedial action plan. We have designated 10% of the GCT to make sure that we get rid of the garrison, get rid of the ghettos, and get rid of the squatter communities, and move Jamaicans into becoming what they should have been long ago. From 1838, they should have gotten access to their land, to own their lands, and to build their lives. We're not going to remediate that because that wasn't done. So if Zozo is about remediating that, it is good. If it is what it really is turning out to be, which is a little band-aid which will not really fix the problem, then of course we won't support that.
You mentioned the right to our land, the right to property. Accordingly, we oppose our government interference with private property, such as confiscation, nationalization, and eminent domain, and support the prohibition of robbery, fraud, misrepresentation. When you say private property and the government cannot interfere or confiscate any land, what if there is a need to for example, to build a road somewhere? The government has no right to that property?
No, it doesn't. So what you just mentioned is a powerful statement, but let me answer the small piece that you have raised. So what you have raised is the issue: can the government see my land and say, me want to build a road from A to B and your land another way, me go and just come take your land and build my road through it? The answer is no. The government has no superior power than any other citizen. So it has to come to me and it has to offer to buy my land, and I have to decide if I want to agree to sell my land and at what price I want to sell my land. The government should have no superior power to the citizens except to protect the rights of citizens. It cannot violate the rights of citizens. It can only protect the right. My land is my property. I am the only one who have domain over that property. And so if you want my land to build a road, a daycare center, a school, a hospital, a bridge, you must get my permission, and you can't use force or fraud to get it. You have to come to me like anybody else who would want to buy my land, and we in the open market decide on whether or not I want to sell my land to you. If I say no, you have to go away.
So you're saying basically we, the citizens of Jamaica, we own land?
Yes.
How so? How do we own land based on the crown having that power over Jamaica? How
Yes,
do
so
we own land in Jamaica?
the crown stole our land, right? Or the colonizers stole our land.
Right.
And
So how
when
do we
they
own any land?
no,
That
well,
the government, if it's a crown land, because we're just holders. If you notice, if you buy a piece of land in Jamaica, you're just basically the holder for the land. So
I'm glad you said that.
If that's the case,
Uh-huh.
and I think we're both aware of this, if that is the case, how are you going to stop the government from cutting a road through your property if they decide that they want to buy it, give you some money and take the land?
Yes, so that's why we're talking now, because the UIC, the United Independence Congress of Jamaica, is going to fix this problem. The lands in Jamaica belongs not to the crown, not to the government, but to the people of Jamaica. And the UIC is going to transfer the lands from the crown and from the government back to ownership in the hands of the Jamaican people. That's a key objective of our platform.
That's big. How are you going to do this?
But hold on. But in addition,
a republic under your watch?
Yeah, man, we're going to become.
And are we going to become a republic under your watch?
Absolutely. Jamaica is going to become the first ever in the history of recent mankind, the recent history. I don't know about before, they had it before, but we're going to have a true republic in Jamaica, a non-partisan constitutional republic. And one of the goals of this republic is to make sure that we do away with a problem you identified, which is property tax. When you buy a piece of land in Jamaica, or you come into ownership of a piece of land or property, it could be a house, a condo, whatever, you will not pay property tax ever again, having paid the first tax on the purchase of the property. So we're going to do away with property tax. That's one of our key objective as a government. Secondarily, we're also going to now give Jamaicans an interest, an ownership interest in land, and an ownership interest in a home by design. We're going to borrow the Singapore model, where they were able to bring their population to 92% home ownership. We're going to bring our population to 98% own ownership, borrowing the Singapore model and building on it, right? And they've done it very successfully. So you can go look it up. You'll see it's a magnificent solution they found. And we're going to apply a similar solution with even much better policies surrounding that.
But
So
how
that
you gonna,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, how you gonna host the Queen? That's what I want.
No, well, we're going to have a referendum on it.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
How you gonna host the Queen one? And are you gonna pay? Are we obligated to pay back that money that the British state paid for our freedom from individual slave owners, and that money that they used to pay for our freedom, quote unquote, pay for our freedom, which is in the range of 15 to 20 billion now. Would you have to, would the citizen of Jamaica have to pay back that money before we can oust the Queen?
That's a misunderstanding, but the answer is no. Jamaica will not be paying a cent to the Queen or to England for any so-called payment for our freedom. Our freedom was not purchased by the Queen and should never have been purchased by anybody. Our freedom is ours and should never have been taken by anyone. So no, there will be no payments. We're simply going to have a referendum here in Jamaica on a new constitution that will replace the current constitution, which is a colonial constitution. The new constitution will get rid of the Queen, the Governor General, and the colonial model of politics from Jamaica, and implement what you're now reading in a new constitution that fully protects the sovereignty of every Jamaican and the collective we call Jamaica.
We who? Because that would have to be voted on, right?
That's what I said. We're going to have a referendum.
Who's going to vote on that?
In a referendum, the voters vote in a referendum.
Right. So are you confident that you will be able to get that vote from the citizens?
Well, anything is possible, but I feel very certain that every Jamaican will want their true freedom.
Because I think when people hear, oh, we're gonna oust the Queen, and they think you can just come into power and get rid of the Governor General and get rid of the military and get rid of the police force, because all these entities are under the Queen. So, and the Governor General protects the interests of the Queen. So, am I to think that it is just as simple as 1, 2, 3 that you can move?
It is nothing in life that is worth having is simple, right? There's always going to be challenges, but for argument's sake, let's look at a poor case. I mean, it's not a true republic what Barbados has created, but they just created a republic, a so-called republic a while ago. They just removed the Queen as their head of state, and they just set up a president instead of the Governor General, and so now they say they're a republic. I don't buy that. It's a sham republic. It's not a real one, but at least you can see an example of how it was supposedly simply done. Trinidad and Tobago is also a republic, so they did that back in the 70s. Guyana is again, I am saying so-called republic because these are honestly not true republic, but they have gotten rid of the Queen on paper, and they have gotten rid of the Governor General on paper. Jamaica is going to have a true republic. We're similarly going to get rid of the Queen and the Governor General and have an elected president and so on. But we're going to have a real republic in that the new constitution will protect the individual sovereignty of all Jamaicans as well as the collective sovereignty of the people who make up Jamaica.
All right, let me just see what we can quickly run through, because I think we've been here a minute. Since government, when instituted, must not violate individual rights, we oppose all interference by governments in areas of voluntary and contractual relations among individuals. People should not be forced to sacrifice their lives and property for the benefit of others. They should be left free by the government to deal with one another as free traders. Is this opening up doors for illegal selling of properties? How would we protect the citizens if the government is not interfering in this area?
I think we have to qualify what we mean by interfering, because I think you're struggling with that. Interfere means that government does not seek to force its will on the people. What government does is protect you in a safe environment, meaning I can't force you to sell your property to me. I can't defraud you in selling a product to you. So I can't say I'm selling baked beans, but it's really butter beans. So I mask it and sell you it. And then, so the government will enforce policing on making sure that if I'm selling you baked beans, it's really baked. If the label says baked beans, the baked beans in there. You understand? So the government will enforce transparency, eliminate fraud. So I can't defraud you. And similarly, I can't force you to buy something from me, nor can I force you, nor can you force me to buy it from you. So when we talk about you just said, interfere means the government doesn't say, okay, Joseph, in order for you to sell ganja, you must find $1 million and pay us in order for you to grow and sell ganja. That's ridiculous. Instead, what you should have is the government saying you're free to grow and sell ganja, provided you don't mislabel it or use force to sell it or whatever. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying. So not interfering means not creating artificial barriers and artificial regulations that are designed oftentimes to do what the public don't realize it's designed to do. Our banking laws, for example, are designed to create monopoly, like a small segment of people who will control banking, and you push out anybody else from that space, or you regulate it so that anybody who comes into the space has to join the club and do what the club says, the cartel. So we want to do away with all of that so that Jamaica can now have the freedom to have many more productivities, many more productions, many more creativities, because government is not manipulating and finding ways to be gatekeeper, to lock some out and let some in and give some special treatment and deny some treatment and so on. So that's what we're talking about when we say not to interfere with people or industries and so
on. Just to quickly go back to something about crime and that I want to bring up. Uniters advocate individual privacy and government transparency. We are committed to ending the government's practice of spying on everyone. We support the rights to be secure in our persons, homes, property, and communications. Protection from unreasonable search and seizure should include records held by third parties, such as bank account, email, medical, and library records. So, are you going to get rid of spying? If you're going to get rid of spying in this era that we're living, a technological era where we're seeing like CCT is assisting or impacting in the fight against crime in some ways. Are you going to get rid of that?
We're going to get rid of the government spying on citizens. So it's not that we're going to get rid of, for example, a camera that is at a location that shows you what's going on there for the purpose of security, general security. The point you're reading is about spying, where the government is going to create surveillance systems and try to get into everybody's business on the basis that they're trying to use that to solve crime, which ended up being used for other things and can even get rid of political opponents and all that kind of stuff. So we are against any of that. And we're going to make sure that we fight crime without committing crimes.
So you're going to end spying basically, even if it reaps the benefit of catching hardened criminals.
No, we're going to make sure that we respect the rights of citizens and focus on denying criminals the right to be criminals. So we're not going to criminalize everybody to solve crime. We're going to focus on finding criminals and stopping criminals. The narrative where we need to turn everybody into a criminal in order to stop criminal is a wrong narrative. It's a wrong approach, and we're 100% opposed to it. I know that we've been trained to accept it, but it's wrong, and we're going to stop it.
Property and contract, let me just go back there. As respect for property rights is fundamental to maintain a free and prosperous society, it follows that the freedom of contract to obtain, retain, profit from, manage, or dispose of one's property must also be upheld. Uniters will free property owners from government property taxes. So you said earlier on that you will cut out property taxes.
Sorry, was there a question?
Yeah, I'm just going back off what you said earlier, that you do away with property
So
taxes.
you're just asking, yes, we are going to get rid of property taxes.
So this is not a major part of the income that would man the society?
And what I mean by getting rid of, I mean perpetual. So you cannot buy a product and perpetually pay tax on it, whether it's land or shoes or a shirt. So that in and itself is wrong, and it's a violation of our right to have to, because what it means is that you don't own the land, you have rented it, right? If you buy something, you don't continue to pay for it forever if you buy it. If you rent it, that's a different story. You keep paying the rent until you and the landlord changes the arrangement. So property is no different. Property is property. I mean, land is a property, and you must either own it or you don't own it. So we're going to stop that. Now, in terms of revenue, loss or gain, let's be very clear. The purpose of government is not to have revenue. That's not the purpose of government. The purpose of government is to protect the rights of citizens. So the revenues that government gets is to do that. It's not there to just simply get revenue. And we have gotten to a place where we've even been trained now to be more concerned about government revenue than our rights. Government is there to protect our rights, and so we must make sure that that is the focus. So now the UIC is going to right size the government, make sure we have the proper size government that actually focuses on protecting our rights, as opposed to having a godlike government that keeps expanding, and absorbing more of our income, while not even being able to deliver on the basics. Right now, this government, not just this administration, but over the last 78 years, have been taking more and more of our GDP, 45% of our gross domestic product. But we can't have pothole-free roads generally. We can't have fixed address generally. We can't have have sidewalks and street lights generally. We can't have a police service that works generally, that keeps us generally safe. We don't have a healthcare system that is generally good. So why are you taking so much of our income? So the UIC is going to change that. Government will have a cap. They'll get 10% of our income from all sources, and that will be the monies which is used for the basic work of government. They're going to get another 10% in sales tax, GCT, and that will be focused on poverty alleviation, particularly ensure that our children get the health care, the nutrition, the education and housing that they need to succeed, and that will be the cap on government. Now, if government wants more revenue, then make sure that the income of the Jamaican people are increasing by having good economic policies that causes income to increase, and then 10% of a bigger income is a bigger revenue, and 10% of a bigger income is more revenues from the sales tax as well. So we're going to limit government, just like how you and I are limited. You and I can't just wave a magic wand and increase our income overnight. We have to work for it. So government should not have the freedom to just increase its revenue because they want to increase their revenue.
So you're basically banking on a hypothetical then, because you're saying citizens will have to, in order for your plan to work, by eliminating property taxes, because you're going to need, in my opinion, you're going to need this to help man society. So if you're going to get rid of this, you're basically hoping that people will earn more so you can get more taxes?
Absolutely not. First of all, we're eliminating property tax because it is wrong, not because we have a need for or less need for revenues. Property tax is wrong. So first begin from the premise of it is wrong. So get rid of the wrong. You don't keep a wrong because you're benefiting from it. You get rid of the wrong. So property tax is wrong. In terms of government revenue, as a CPA and chartered accountant for a number of years, I understand economics and I understand finance, and I've looked at the government budget and the cost of operating, and I know that 10% income tax plus 10% GCT is enough to meet all the needs of government to deliver a better Jamaica than what we have now?
Eminent domain, civil asset forfeiture, governmental limits on profits, governmental production. I'm still looking at property and contract, production mandates, and governmental controls on prices of goods and services, including wages, rent, and interest, are abridgments of such fundamental rights. For voluntary dealings among private entities, parties should be free to choose with whom they trade and set whatever trade terms are mutually agreeable. Is this a gift to companies like JPS?
Now, JPS is not an ordinary company. JPS is a monopoly created by government, which we're going to get rid of. What you just read a while ago, is about a truly free and fair market economy, where every person, you, for example, deciding to hire me to do your accounting for you, you and I sit down and have a discussion about your needs, and then I tell you a price, and if you like what I offer, you decide to hire me or not, via contract to do your accounting for you. If you don't like what I'm offering and somebody else offers something better or a price that seems more amenable to you, you choose to accept that price. That's a free market. That's the way we were meant to be. Somebody has tricked us into thinking that somehow we need an arrangement where there's a third party who is not a part of the deal. Somebody who is not either finding the money to pay for the deal or is providing the service or product. Some other person must be outside of it, no consequences to them normally, and they're going to be able to set the price and terms for us. That is foolishness. It's wrong. I know we've been taught to accept this, but it is wrong. We need to stop it.
So, Mr. Patterson, quickly in a nutshell, how are you going to get rid of JPS?
Okay, so JPS, now we're going to simply open the energy market and empower the Jamaican people to go into energy without having government blocking them. So, for example, you're now going to have more producers of energy. The government is going to own the infrastructure for energy delivery. So anyone can plug into that infrastructure and sell energy to the market directly through the network that government provides as a public service, as opposed to having a monopoly where one company gets to own the infrastructure and then manipulate the market and dictate the terms. We're going to get rid of that system. And again, that's not easy. We're not saying it's going to be simple and easy. We're saying we're going to get rid of it because it is wrong. We're going to open the market to producers of energy. We're going to facilitate the market to grow because people will now have the freedom to get into the energy space with different kinds of mixes of energy. Geothermal, which we have not even begun to really test in Jamaica, mix of hydro, mix of solar, mix of biogas. There's so many other opportunities which our government right now is stifling and stopping because the Constitution allows them to do this kind of robbery of the Jamaican people. We're going to remove all of that and open the market to the Jamaican people to produce energy and sell energy to each other.
So you don't see any economic turmoil with your, because what I'm hearing from you is it sounds as if you're willing to get rid of neoliberalism. So you see no form of economic turmoil from this.
What I see is a robust, prosperous economy very, very quickly. The moment we lift the artificial barriers and the ugly regulations that have been designed to suppress small business and entrepreneurs in Jamaica, you're going to see a boom like never before. There won't be a revenue issue for government because of that, I can assure you. And you're going to have far more jobs being created overnight because of this. We're about to take away the economy of Jamaica from the private sector organization of Jamaica and give it to the people of Jamaica.
But you're going to face legal challenges. How are you? I know this sounds good for the voters, and this sounds like some good points, and people will be like excited to hear that. Yeah, we're going to oust these private companies or these private corporations, and we're going to give you all people the country to run. But it comes with consequences. You're going to be sanctioned. you're going to be challenged by these corporations. I know it's good talking points for the party, but and we are dealing with people who are not concerned about maybe people who are following you are not concerned about these things, but I'm truly concerned. This is gonna be legally challenged if you're gonna get rid of companies that such as JPS and other, I guess, Water Commission and all those companies, and give it to the citizens to run, and give citizens more opportunity to invest in energy and stuff like that. It sounds good, but there are gonna be some form of challenges. That are you willing to take these people to court? Are you ready for when these people take you to court? Excuse me, because they're gonna have rights to their property.
So I think there's a misunderstanding here. First of all, nothing is easy, as I said before. But I think you are misunderstanding the fact that Jamaica has to make choices, right? We have two basic choices before us. Keep doing what we have been doing and hope for a different result, or change. So if we keep doing what we're doing, you're going to have more unemployment, more crime, more corruption, and eventually a completely failed state similar to Haiti or worse, as you have identified before. So option one is to keep doing what we're doing and get the same and worse results. Option two is for us to step back and see what can we do differently. Now, I have taken the time together with my team to step back and look at what we can do differently. We're not going to be taking away anybody's property. What we're going to be doing is giving Jamaicans their property and giving Jamaicans their rights.
But
And
you just said you're gonna get rid of JPS.
no, I didn't say I'm getting rid of JPS, meaning I'm going to take away JPS from anybody. What we're going to do is to make sure that the Jamaican people have their rights to enter the energy market fully. And we are going to make sure that the energy infrastructure, the public energy infrastructure, is owned by the people of Jamaica through their government as a public service. Now, does it mean that JPS or any other organization in Jamaica will have a problem with that? Of course they will. Anybody who has a monopoly right now will not want to lose their monopoly. They will not want the government to change anything. But that's the whole reason why you have government. That's the whole reason why you have a political process, because we need to be able to discuss and decide changing something. Now, the people of Jamaica will get a chance to vote, and they'll decide, do they want the UIC to change the government, to change the system of governance so that their rights are protected and upheld by a new constitution that gets rid of the colonial structure, get rid of the partisan structure, get rid of the fraudulent economic structure, which is denying them their rights? Or will they vote again to try another 5 years, having seen the results of the previous 78? Now, I am banking on the idea that the Jamaican people are ready for change, and that they don't just want any change. They want the kind of change which the UIC is advocating. Yes, some part of it may not be swallowed easily. Why? Because we have been miseducated and misinformed. And what we think make logical sense may actually not make sense. So the UIC is brave enough, willing enough to engage the Jamaican people and say, listen, I know you believe this or so, but I know so. It now work, it's wrong, and we're going to explain to you why. And then we have a better system that's going to actually lift your income, lift your freedom, and lift the level of prosperity and security in this country to a level never before seen, and better than what they have in Singapore now, which is damn good.
Energy and resources quickly. While energy is needed to fuel a modern society, the government should not be subsidizing any particular form of energy. The government, we oppose all government control of energy pricing, allocation, and production. If this is the case, you're saying the government, who is currently part owner in companies like Petrojam, and because of this, the price is in the best interest, in my opinion, of the consumers. Another entity, the JUTC, is subsidized by the government to maintain cheaper transportation costs. If you're gonna stop the government from subsidizing in any particular form of energy, would these prices escalate beyond the reach of the citizens?
No, the government is actually not subsidizing anything. The government is stealing from the Jamaican people and telling them that they have subsidized the price. You're paying everything that you think you're getting. You're paying double for it. The government's control of Petrojam
Yeah.
has been very costly to the Jamaican people. It has resulted in higher prices actually for energy. The government control of JPS has been very costly to the people, resulted in higher cost of energy. So we are going, and even the subsidies to the transportation sector, this is all a sham, which we're paying for dearly. So we're going to change all of that. We're going to make sure that, for example, let's take energy. We'll now allow, which should have been done a long time ago, we will allow the ingenuity and creativity of the Jamaican people, the entrepreneurs among us and Jamaicans overseas to be able to easily enter the energy market and stop being blocked by government so that they can bring massive energy solutions that will benefit the Jamaican people and reverse what has been done. Get rid of the monopoly, not by us physically getting rid of anybody. We're going to simply change the laws to protect the Jamaican people from monopolies.
But wouldn't this get rid of what the OUR is doing? Because if
Of
the
course
government
it
is not
will.
if the government is not involved, the government is not subsidizing,
We don't
based on
need the OUR.
what
Mhm.
is in your
Yes.
piece. Wouldn't this be opening up the doors for companies to like increase energy price on consumers?
Mr. Vegas, it will be opening up competition, which will bring down prices. They really get us they really mess us up. So OUR is simply a facade to continue the manipulation. The OUR is ridiculous. It is nonsensical and unimportant. It is there to give the sense to the citizens that the government is doing something while they're simply inch by inch denying the Jamaican people their right and causing them to have to pay more than they have to. The best solution for energy in Jamaica is an open market that allows the best of Jamaicans to come forward with solutions.
So let me
There are many entrepreneurs, Jamaican entrepreneurs here in Jamaica and abroad who could produce cheap energy in this country and give us a mix of energy and a competition in that mix of energy that actually brings down prices for the Jamaican people. We've been sold a bag of goods and we're suffering for it.
But what I'm hearing, Mr. Patterson, in all
Yes.
respect, I'm hearing you are dependent on private owners to have a conscience. When has that ever happened?
No, we're not depending on private owners to have a conscience. We understand economics and understand how economics work. So there's no conscience issue here. All that's going to happen, Vegas, is what happened to you. You
Right.
get up one day and say you want to be a recording artist. What you have to do? You have to understand the market and you have to compete and try to find the kind of songs that you think are going to reach the market. And then you have to perform like hell and you have to compete with other artists. And it's only by you finding the right price, and I'm using the word price here now in terms of finding what matches with the market, that you break in. The same thing happens in every other industry. Don't let them fool you. Every industry, unless somebody mess with it, you understand me? Unless somebody mess with it, it finds its right price, and that will be the price that attracts investment and attracts employees and create the kind of outcomes that's best for society. The role of government, never forget this, the role of government is to create the environment so that our Jamaican people can get involved in their economy and stop sitting down and waiting for somebody else to come and save them. And then the government using that mentality and that framework to sell out the people to some individuals and then use regulation to lock us into higher prices that benefit a few at the expense of the many.
Government and finance spending. All persons are entitled to keep the fruits of their labor and spend their earnings as they see fit. To this end, Uniters wish to limit the government of revenues of no more than 10% of all individuals' earnings to fund spending on public goods and services that will ensure a safe, clean, and orderly environment wherein everyone may live, work, and retire with dignity in a truly free and fair economy. Limit income tax, based on what you're saying here, is 10% to fund humanitarian crises, including proper nutrition, education, healthcare, and housing of the poor. United propose a government collect a sales tax of 10%, which shall be designated for these purposes only. No child should be denied the benefit of basic education, good nutrition, decent housing, or healthcare. The parents, father and mother, must be held accountable, but the child should not suffer in the process. So 10% sales tax and 10% on income tax. How is this going to pay off the debt? Are you not interested in paying off the debt and man the society?
Oh, well, obviously we have to deal with both the debt and the operating cost of government, and also deal with the social ills that have been created by 77 years of bad governance. So
Right, before we go off this,
we're
just quickly so we understand, so we don't go off.
yes,
off track.
yes,
So there's not going to be any property taxes. So we get rid of that. So now we're
yes.
at only income tax and sales tax, and we have debt to pay, and you're basically putting forward all these things here: nutrition, housing, blah blah blah. So I'm saying, just in a nutshell, without going off the subject, how are you going to accomplish this with just income tax 10% and sales tax 10%?
Because it will be enough.
Government debt. The government should not incur debt at interest, but should instead operate on a balanced budget of 10% of the income generated by residents and print only as much money as can be absorbed by true productivity growth while protecting the purchasing power of senior citizens by avoiding artificial inflation, devaluation, and deflation at all costs. How are you going to get any debt without interest?
Oh, because and I'm going to keep my answer, because let me tell you why I give relatively lengthy answers, because short answers like the one I just gave you doesn't
Right.
provide any context and means nothing. So if I give you another short answer here, which is no government needs to borrow at interest, none whatsoever, unless there is a major catastrophic destruction of the country and they need to rebuild and they have everything is demolished. Then you have to borrow from external parties to be able to rebuild the country. Or you have a war that wiped out your country. But if you're talking about the regular operations of government, they do not need to borrow at interest. The only reason they're borrowing at interest is because they have bought into a fraudulent international global monetary system, which has taken away the sovereignty of countries to manage their own money and banking system and given it to private hands, which then forces the government to borrow at interest to make these private hands very rich.
So who are going to lend you money without you paying any interest on it? That is what I'm. This is the part that really caught me. Who's going to lend you money, Mr. Patterson? Like I know it's again.
Because you don't understand the economy. You don't I'm telling because you don't understand. So let me explain to you.
I do not need to understand economy.
Let me tell
Hold on. I don't need to understand economy on the level where you're at.
Let me tell you. I'll tell you.
What I'm saying, based on what I've known over the years, and based on what I've studied such far, are cognizant of, I cannot see how you're going to get money to borrow without paying any interest.
Can I tell you? Do you want me to tell you?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the money of a country is when it's operating within the laws that it should be operating in, the money of a country is owned by the government of the country. They put money into circulation. They're the one that produces the thing that we use called money. So for all the services that the government needs to do, it buys those services from the private market. all it has to do, and this is going to sound ridiculous because they have lied to you and misled you, all the government has to do is print the money that it needs to buy the goods and services that it needs to buy, and that is going to then be covered by the taxations they then collect back from the people to pay for the things that they have just provided to the people. That's how it works. Now, this is simplified. I'm giving you a simplified version of it. Now, what they told us we need to do is to create a mechanism whereby the money that the government uses, that it borrows, is produced by the central banking system, which is governed by the private banks, which is a part of the banking cartel. So it says, no, don't print your own money from your own central bank and fund your operations with it by buying services and products from your people. Instead, first borrow the money from private banks and then pay them an interest instead of paying yourself the so-called interest. And so that now increases the cost of taxation to the citizens, because now you're not just paying back the money the government produces to push into the economy to provide you services, you're also paying a premium on it in the form of interest back to private banks. It's a trick. It works beautifully and it destroys countries. The UIC understand the trick and we're going to reverse it.
I hear Mr. Patterson, but we do not print our money. Our money is printed in Britain. But you're going to get rid of the Queen.
Absolutely.
So if you do not print your money and our money, if we do not print our money and our money is printed in Britain, how are you going to accomplish this in let's say your first 4 years in office?
So we're going to get rid of other people printing our money. We're going to print our own money.
Then the dollar is going to come in like the Zimbabwe currency.
Okay, so you see that is how. Hold on, no, stop there. That is how they fool you up, you know. So here's what they tell you: if you don't do what we say you should do, you're going to end up like Zimbabwe. Why they didn't tell you about Germany? You're going to end up like Germany, right? Germany printed money like crazy during right after World War I and II, and it caused them to get into some serious problem, right? Now hold on. If you don't print your own money responsibly and you let other people print your money and other people manages your liquidity, what you do, and they're smart, they created a systematic way of gradually impoverishing the country because they're smart. They know you can't print money willy-nilly. So they gradually impoverish your country. So instead of we allow them to gradually impoverish your country, why don't we take back our money and manage it properly? You don't have to get to Zimbabwe. You don't have to get to Germany. Just manage your money properly. As
Mr.
opposed
Patterson,
to yes.
Mr. Patterson, currently we owe the IMF, the Chinese, the IDD, and what you're saying, I know it sounds good for enthusiastic voters, but is it realistic? Are you going to, for example, the Chinese, that Jamaica owes so much money? What are you going to say to the Chinese? Are you going to get money to borrow from the Chinese? Because don't let the Barbados situation fool us. Stepping away from the Queen is stepping to China.
So you and I are on the same page about Barbados. We know that is
currently we owe the Chinese. Yeah. So how? Let's move on. Let's move on. Government employees.
No, don't move on. No, don't move on because you're leaving your listeners hanging. What you're saying to us here, Mr. Vegas, is that because we're in a bind, let's stay in the bind. I am telling you how we're going to get out of the bind. You're worried that if we do what the UIC is saying, we're going to have challenges. Yes, we're going to have challenges. That's what it means to fix a business. That's what it means to fix a country. That's what it means to fix a family. If you and your wife have problem, you're going to have challenges and you're going to have to try to fix it. And when you're trying to fix it, you're going to have challenges. The same thing for a company, the same thing for a country. The UIC understands how to fix the problem. Now you think that by us going to a 10% income tax and a 10% GCT, somehow is going to be impossible. You haven't asked me yet to explain to you, okay, you don't want me to speak too long, how it works. We're not saying we come into office Monday morning and Monday morning you drop everything from that to 10%. You have to phase these things in. So you have to work at a phase level and get the pieces in. Now, the loans will have to be repaid, or some of them will have to be renegotiated. Terms will have to change. My job as president is to ensure that we manage that transition very well, that we negotiate very well. So far, those who have been in charge of our government have been negotiating away our future at an alarming speed. And that's what we need to worry about. That is failing, and it will continue to fail. So we can't continue to fail. We have to change course.
I hear you, sir. You said something interesting just now, but before
Yes.
I ask you about that, so your first 100 days in office, and you want to get some money to borrow, who are you going to turn to without interest?
No, you're
If you can keep it a secret, because maybe it's one of your ammunition. But who are you gonna turn to? Like,
Listen.
you must have somebody in mind. You must already
Okay.
start speaking to lenders. Like,
No.
I want a loan without interest.
No. One of your assumptions is that
Right.
we have to continue to borrow. That's one of your assumptions.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not
Right.
saying that. I'm not.
So, okay.
That's not what
So
I'm
we're right. Okay.
I'm going
so,
off the manifesto. You're saying the government should not incur debt at interest.
yes.
So I'm saying I don't see how this is plausible here. In my opinion, I think nobody's going to lend you any money without interest. But let's move on from here because
nobody's going to lend us money without interest. Nobody.
Exactly.
That's why I'm saying we're not going to be borrowing. So what you have to now learn, what you have to now learn is what economy operates where the government doesn't borrow from the private entities to continue to survive. And we have that model. If the current government may not understand it, or the one before may not understand it, but we understand it. So we know we don't. Now, this doesn't happen day one in office or the first 100 days. You have to transition.
Right. You said president just now. Are you going to be doing a term? Are you going to change the system to a term limit? Just yes or no?
I can't answer yes or no because that's for the Jamaican people to decide. When we go out and roll out,
do you support a term limit? Do you support a term limit?
Personally, no. I don't think you need a term limit. What I think you need is good governance. And with good governance, what you end up with now is people being able to vote in honest and open elections.
So we're back with the same type of political space where one person represents a party, and that person can get old and gray, and there is nobody to challenge that person.
What you have just done is that you have assumed that we're keeping the same corrupt environment, which allows that to happen.
Well, we have heard these sweet stories before, or these sweet promises. So we, the voters, we want to play it safe. So I think that is something that the voters should challenge you on.
No, if the voters want term limits, if the voters say they want a term limit, that's for them to decide. I am going to explain to the voters that the problem they're trying to fix is not the one that's fixed by term limits. Term limits make you feel good. What you need is good governance.
But it will at least let the political leaders understand that the voters can vote them out.
In the current system, you need every single thing you can throw at it. Term limits, whatever it is. But the system we're proposing, that will no longer be something that is of any necessity because of the system we're proposing.
Right. All right. So if I may just interject again, Vegas and Mr. Patterson. We've been doing well so far, but we're starting to talk over each other again. So let's just keep it, going smoothly. Where Vegas, you ask the question, give Mr. Patterson a chance to answer, and then come back in. All right, brother?
All right. Respect, brother. I think we just got comfortable speaking to each other. Government employees, we favor repealing any requirement that one must join or pay dues to a union as a condition of government employment. We advocate replacing defined benefit pensions with defined contribution plans as are commonly offered in the private sector, so as not to impose debt on future generations without their consent. So teachers and public sectors, they will not have any representation based on your mandate that you're applying, right?
No, that's not so. We're not saying you cannot have representation. We're saying that it should not be a mandate by government that you go into and get this group or that group or this person to represent you. You are free to choose your representation. It should not be mandated by law that you have this particular or that particular representation.
So who will represent the above mentioned in a case of industrial dispute?
They will decide that.
So we're leaving it up to the workers, the teachers and public sectors.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't want to take away their rights. We
Decide
want them.
if they want to join a union, yes or no. So if they choose not to join a union, it's up to them.
Yes, absolutely.
And this, you think this is in the best interest of the teachers and the public sector?
No, I think it's in the best interest of every Jamaican to be able to make their own choices.
Licensing, unite to support the right to every person to earn an honest and peaceful living through the free and voluntary exchange of goods and services. Accordingly, we oppose occupational in order licensing laws that infringe on the rights or treat it as a state granted privilege. In the current administration, what licensing laws are infringement on the public are you referring to? That you will change?
Any licensing law at all, including from medical licensure, nursing licensure, chemistry licensure, you name it. We do not believe that you should be able to use licensing arrangements to exclude people from markets. It must be an open market, and you must have voluntary inclusion. And then you have the public making the decision which of the standard bodies, standard setting bodies and verification bodies they wish to appeal to, as opposed to having government impose these things on them, which oftentimes simply mean that special interest groups manipulate the government to set rules that serves their interests and claim it's in the interest of the public.
So let's go to retirement and income security at 23. Retirement planning is the responsibility of the individual, not the government. Uniters will phase out the current government-sponsored system and transition to a private voluntary system. The proper and most efficient source of help for the poor is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals. We believe members of society will become even more charitable, and civil society will be strengthened as the government reduces its activity in this realm. So you're basically saying the people should depend on philanthropists if you're going to cut out the whole pension system?
No, I'm not saying that. So first and foremost, pension is a personal matter. It should not be government imposing a pension scheme on citizens. What we want to have are highly informed and educated Jamaicans that make decisions about their pension arrangements. We want intelligent Jamaicans, not Jamaicans that are expecting somebody to program something for them, and then they find out at 65 that, whoops, it didn't work out quite well and you're in the poorhouse. So we want to change that dynamics. In terms of philanthropy, we strongly believe in recreating the community spirit in Jamaica, where people see that they are responsible to work with each other, to build relationships, build communities, and not give them the fake and false sense that everything that happens is about government. We want to recreate and rejuvenate community and people. We want to get the charity sector working again. We want to get people volunteering again. We want to rebuild that spirit of Jamaican community, as opposed to push the North American concept of everybody becoming what do you call it now? Isolated and no longer connected to each other. We have to stop that, and our government is going to bring back that spirit of community in the way we operate.
But Mr. Patterson, you're saying the proper and most effective source of help for the poor is the voluntary efforts of private groups and individuals. When has that ever happened? Or can you give me an example of that, or which society that works?
In every single society that works. But what you're talking about, what's coloring your judgment, is the society that we now have, where we allow politicians to tax us to the moon, telling us that they're going to help the poor, and then we keep seeing more and more poor, and people are not getting the service, and a few people behind the scene just get richer and richer, at collecting monies on behalf of the poor. What we want is a situation where the poor actually gets the help it needs directly. Now, our government has put in a 10% GCT plan to make sure we cover that basic, because we're righting a wrong. What you're reading right now is what happens when we bring up the prosperity level of the country and overcome all the wrongs that have been done to the Jamaican people. But in a proper free and fair society, you don't want your government to be to take over the space of charity. You want to make sure that the charity space really works and is built up by virtue of people getting involved and engaged in their community, as opposed to us trying to make sure that the job of charity becomes that of government. It's a wrong mix. It's a destructive mix. And every country that has tried it is seeing more and more disintegration of their communities and bigger government and greater inefficiencies.
Hold on, Mr. Patterson.
Yes.
Let's make sure we're on the same page, because you're going to be, some of these things I'm asking is from, just to let the viewers understand, I'm asking you these questions from your manifesto. I'm just asking these questions. These are not questions that I put together, just to make it clear to the listeners or the viewers. You're going to be hammered on these things, I think, because pension is something that I think you have to really look at. And if you're saying we must leave it up to people, charitable and civil society for people to depend on, in the latter part of their life, I think this is treading on some dangerous territory. But the voters will have to decide this one.
But I did not say that. You're saying that. I did not say
it's
you
here.
should
It's
leave
the
your...
proper and most. Let me read it again. It says retirement planning, is the responsibility of the individual, not the government.
Stop. That's the first thing, right?
Right.
Is there a full stop there?
So you're going to get rid of the security that the pension system there, based on what I'm reading.
No, I'm not. What you're reading is that the government is not going to force you into its pension program. It's going to allow you now to choose your pension program.
To decide,
you, the citizen.
To decide if you want to be in a pension program, yes or no?
No, you will choose your pension program. You will choose.
Right. So does that mean? Sorry to cut you off. Does that mean I can choose not to?
Absolutely. And right now in Jamaica, many persons have chosen not to. Many persons. They're not getting a paycheck. If you're not getting a paycheck, there's no NIS coming off your pay. There's at least 500,000 Jamaicans right now who are not paying NIS because they have no paycheck. In fact, every year, less and less people in Jamaica have a paycheck. They have to be hustling. They're not paying any NIS. So what would you prefer? Why don't we build an economy where people stop living on the margin and therefore can start to think and plan their lives and choose which healthcare program, which insurance program, which pension program they want to be in. And because of the way we have now created the country, you have many options. You have different people who want to be in this kind of pension program versus that. Instead, what we have is a government mandated program, a government restricted economy, and more Jamaicans are falling behind while we feel pretty that we have NIS, we have a label say NIS, but more and more Jamaicans are falling through the cracks and are suffering because they're uneducated, so they can't even think, they don't even know how to plan for pension because their education system failed them. Their health are failing because they weren't educated properly about how to care for their bodies, which is our system pushes that. Learn about you. No, so listen, let's not go for the optics. Let's look at the substance of what we're talking about.
You mentioned education. Let's look at education, healthcare, and crime last.
Yes.
Education is best provided by the free market, achieving great quality, accountability, and efficiency with more diversity of choice, recognizing that the education of children is a parental responsibility. We would restore authority to parents to determine the education of their children without interference from the government. Parents should have the control of and responsibility of all funds expended for their children's education. So I have a few questions in here. So if we're saying education should be determined by the parents for the children, does that mean um, a parent can choose to homeschool their child or children? And should this, are you removing subsidies from the school as well? What about lunch program such as Nutribon and milk? And are you going to privatize schools? And wouldn't this increase school fees? So there's like 5 different questions in there. You can in no such order.
Sure. So we're not going to privatize schools. We're going to make schools truly public schools, which are owned and operated by the people in their community. So you're going to have Jamaicans from across the world and in Jamaica who will now have access to introducing all kinds of schools. So our parents will now have a mosaic of schools, different types, sports schools, religious schools, scientific schools, business schools, schools with different emphasis and schools with different focus that will help parents to have options to choose from. We are going to change the model of schooling so that the government no longer runs school and at the same time tries to regulate it, which means we end up with a poor product, because if the regulator is also engaged in the operation, then they can't truly be honest and objective about what's going on. So we're going to make sure government takes the regulatory role and let the schools become truly public schools, which are operated by public engagement, public boards, and all that kind of stuff. In terms of funding now, the funding follows the child. So any child who is in a home where the parents cannot afford the school fees, those children will be funded 100% by the government. In those homes where the parents can afford 50% of the school fee, for example, then they'll be funded 50% by the government. In those homes where the parents can afford 100% of the school fees, then they'll be funded 0 by the government. What this does, it's going to ensure that we now raise the quality and quantity and diversity of schools. In terms of price now, when you understand economics, right now a private school is very expensive, what we call private school. Why? Because the government has a monopoly on education by way of force, which then takes the larger chunks of students away from the so-called private market. So those who are providing private education, the price of necessity has to be very high because they're catering to a smaller pool of customers. If you change the model where there's no distinction now between private or public because they're all operating on the same basis, now the vast majority now of customers are now available to all of these schools, which will now bring down the price, while because of the competitive nature of the program, drives up the quality. So Jamaica is now going to have a high quality school system with diversity at a reasonable price, and the poor will always be funded to attend the school of their choice. So let's say, for argument's sake, you, Mr. Vegas, became a Rastafarian and you don't want to send your child to a school that doesn't teach the values of Rastafarianism. I'm just giving it as an example, right? Right now, you have no choice. Because the government already take your money from you and then design a system, you must send your kids. They can cut off the ear of your child if they want, or they can discriminate against you, whatever. In the UIC system, you now have a choice. And those who want to offer Rastafarian schools, because they're not being discriminated against by the system, they now can actually operate fully because they can attract students easily who want to be a part of their schools, because the system doesn't artificially and by design lock them out of the market. So we have found an effective solution to give parents what they want, improve the quality of education while managing the cost, because we understand economics and we understand how to build systems.
So you're going to change the curriculum to accommodate people who I guess would like their children to learn whatever their ideology is based on.
Right. So we're not going to change. Okay. First of all, we're throwing away the curriculum that now exists. So it's not a matter of changing the curriculum. A school will have the freedom to develop their curriculum. What we're going to do as a government is to provide a base. The base will include the necessity for every child to learn 3 things, very important. They must understand themselves, mind, body, and character, like understand themselves biologically, sociologically, psychologically, understand themselves. We believe this is critical because this is going to affect them for the rest of their lives. Current school system focuses on academics as the core, which then gives us workers for the factories and employees, but they're not prepared for life. So we want to prepare our students for life. So first, your body, mind, and spirit, if you will, character. Secondly, we want to make sure the child learns human behavior, how to build relationship in the family, in the community, with your friends, in business. So learn how human beings behave and how to work with them. And thirdly, they must learn about money, how the monetary system works, the science of money, the history of money, the politics of money, and how to become wealthy by managing money effectively. This is the core competency of the school system. The rest of it now is based on the academic subjects, math, English, and sciences, and the arts. But we want to suggest and encourage the schools to do cross-disciplinary. So you link the disciplines, not teach them in silos, and you link it also to technology and trades so that you learn practically how to apply what you're learning. So this will be the framework provided by the government, and while allowing the individual schools now to layer on top of that their own specialities. So we want the Maroons to be able to have their school system that reflects and teaches the values of the Maroons, because that's important to them. The Rasta, the same thing. The Christian, the same thing. The Muslim, the same thing. The Hindu, the same thing. Without us imposing on them, to take away their opportunities by creating a system that locks out all of that. We have now reversed that. We're going to create a Jamaica that's like no other, that truly respects people's sovereignties and people's rights, and get us to have a more wholesome society because we learn to appreciate each other.
So in other words, you're saying it will be left up to the schools to decide what the curriculum is about them.
It will be up to the school and their customers, the parents.
And the customers. So case in point, in some schools in the States, and I think in Canada, where they have their sex education teachings. So basically we're setting a precedent where in Jamaica we can have that type of program for children, whether it is transgender coming in teaching children, etc., like we have seen it in other areas or other societies. Would that be something that is allowed in your administration?
So in our administration, we're not in the business of blocking out anybody. What we're doing is making sure that we regulate. So for example, is anybody abusing children, or applying any practices that could be considered to be abusive or whatever. So if that's not happening, that's fine. But remember, in our model, the parents choose. So let's say, following your lead, let's say a school comes and they want to teach transgenderism and they want to teach, let's say, homosexuality. And let's say 90% of Jamaicans don't want that, for argument's sake. It's very easy. The school and all the students, you realize what happened? Out of business because the parents chose. But let's say in the current model, the government wanted to sneak in transgender and sneak in homosexuality, through different creative ways of doing it. Right now, most parents don't have any choice. They either go or forfeit the money the government already took from them and try to find a private school at the high price because of the market conditions, and suffer again while the government is taking advantage of their tax dollars. So in our model, you, the parents, are back in the driver's seat. You're in charge. You don't want your child to learn about this. You say, which school offer, let's say, for example, the Christian program where they teach that revelation is important and the character of Christ is important. So you go find a school there. And that school, let's say most Jamaicans want the kind of school there. You'll find majority of the school will be like that because that's where the customers are going to. And
So it will be on a vote. It will be if majority of the people decide that they want to have a Christian kind of ideological curriculum, it will be left up to the society, you're saying, or the school?
No, man, you know, it's the a parent gets to vote by their choice. So just like when you go into the supermarket, you
Right.
vote which bread you like by buying the bread there.
Right.
So,
Right.
so if everybody are buying the bread there, guess what the store owner realize? Buy more of the bread there to sell. The same thing in the school environment. If you find that more parents are looking for schools that teaches Christian values, whichever version of that you think, they're going to find that those schools will attract more students and will therefore become more popular. The same thing like, let's say somebody comes up with a school that really teaches math very well, and parents think it's important for their kids to learn math very well. And this bright spark that came back from Africa with some good ideas, and him put up a school, and him a show. Like I met a guy the other day, he has found a brilliant way to teach with music, right? I don't remember the name, but I was so impressed. And kids are learning in this class. Now, suppose him want to go big. Right now, him can't go fast, because the government is going to block him by making sure that their system is the majority, and that's the monopoly. But suppose we didn't have that system, and he could therefore truly open up his doors and many Jamaicans say, "The boy are wicked enough. Fee math program, it'll blow away things." Then more parents line up at his door. Guess what happened? Those parents get good quality tuition and they're happy with what's happening with their students, but the other schools will pay attention and they will say, "Oh, let's adopt what he's doing." And they have more of those best schools are developing and the population grows. What we have now, the one size fits all. If them a teach with foolishness, the majority of we are going to learn foolishness, and there's no competition.
Let's jump into healthcare quickly.
Yeah.
We favor a free market healthcare system as opposed to the existing system that does not support freedom of choice. We recognize the freedom of individuals to determine the level of health insurance they want, if any, the level of healthcare they want, the care providers they want, the medicines and treatments they will use, and all other aspects of their medical care, including end-of-life decisions. People should be free to purchase health insurance from whom and as they see fit. So the latter part of the statement of what you have here, end of life decisions. That means people can freely commit suicide if they choose to.
Yes, it's their choice. If it's their choice, we're not
So
going
if someone is sick and they want to commit suicide, it's on their. It's their.
Yes, we're not going to create. We're not going to create artificial barriers to make them have to go hide and do it or be illegal.
Right.
But that is not the essence of the argument. That is just one piece to clarify for people.
Right. I'm just asking that because
I know, but it's just that you pick it out, and when you pick it out, what you do sometime when you do that, right? You get a big paragraph and you pick out one word, and everybody eyes dart to the one word and forget the big paragraph. So here's the big paragraph.
That was
the big
yes
paragraph. I know, but the big
paragraph. Hold on a second. Let me just ask Andy to answer Mr. Patterson. 1 second. So we get suicide out of the way. Would you put healthcare in private entities' hands? How will this impact the poor? Would you have to pay it or get denied for services? Example, children hospital, public hospital, Spanish Town hospital, those hospitals, women having children, so forth and so on. What will happen to these people if it becomes a private entity?
All right. Before Mr. P answers that one, Mr. Vegas, allow him to respond to the suicidal thing, because that kind of get cut off right there. And I understood what he was getting at when he said, people will kind of zone in on that right there without getting the full understanding.
Yeah, answer, but I want him to answer. I don't want it to go and say, I don't want it to be said that I'm just picking out the part. I just asked him that part because it was a latter part of the conversation. So he can actually go back to that.
Right, but I'm more interested in opportunity to respond to it.
Yeah, man. What I'm more interested in, though, is he's trying to privatize healthcare. That is what I'm most interested in.
Right. So we're not.
In other words, that was just
right. So we're not privatizing healthcare. What we're doing is, again, like I just described for education, we're making sure that the government isn't able to manipulate your healthcare to favor certain providers of healthcare services. So what we have now is a monopolistic healthcare service where the government takes our money and then dictates what kind of care we can get and from whom, which is quite destructive. So the simplistic way of saying, are you going to privatize healthcare is the usual kind of political jargon that you use to kneecap a person, because when people hear privatize healthcare, then that's the end of the world. No, what we're doing is providing healthcare choice. We're making sure that the people of Jamaica will have the choice of their healthcare. So instead of us limiting them to which doctors they can see, limiting them to what medications they may have access to, limiting them to what kind of insurance they may buy, we're going to liberate the Jamaican people so that they are in the driver's seat of their healthcare. Concerning the poor, as I explained before, we have a 10% GCT, which is committed to making sure that the poor receives the care that they need without doing what has been done so far, nationalizing the healthcare program and giving everybody a bad system while the rich go and pay for their best system. The UIC approach will give us instead a good system, a great healthcare system for everybody, rich and poor. So the rich don't have to run off to their special system and the poor are left with the substandard system. We're going to have one high quality healthcare system, which is truly public, meaning it is not run by the government. It is regulated by the government. It is not subsidized by the government. The government pays for the poor to access the same high quality, well-run, good customer service, good quality medicine for the people. But in addition to that, the UIC believes it's very important that we educate the Jamaican people to take care of themselves and let them understand that there are other options. We don't have to lock ourselves into imported pharmaceutical products. We can open up our research and development. We can get our own people to start studying how to use what we have to treat ourselves. We can open up the entire industry so that Jamaica starts to benefit from thinking and creativity and ingenuity and science, as opposed to having a government controlled by our foreign masters dictate and push upon us our foreign masters' products and our foreign masters' way, while our people are dying and suffering from cancers and so on and going to dilapidated hospitals. Let us not fool ourselves. Let us not allow them to trick us with phrases. Let us find the substance of what is going on and fix the real problem rather than play games with words and semantics.
But again, Mr. Patterson, and I know you're catering to the voters, yeah. But what you have here, we favor a free healthcare system as
a free market, not a free healthcare.
Free healthcare. Well, I'm reading what is in your mandate.
Okay.
In manifesto. So what I'm reading here, we favor free healthcare market, whatever it is, and opposed to the existing system that does not support freedom of choice. So I'm saying, is this opening up the doors for doctors to deny patients?
I just explained to you, you're trying to phrase this. I'm telling you what we're doing. We're making sure that the patient have a choice. We're not talking about doctors denying.
I understand that, understand that. But
right, so I don't know where is that coming from. I'm not talking about doctors denying anybody anything. Yeah.
But with you doing that, Mr. Patterson,
yes,
wouldn't it be beneficial to, what would be the consequence then? Are any consequences for doctors denying patients because of the system you implemented?
No, we're not designing a system where doctors deny or don't. Is it the system we have? Okay, let's do this properly. What do you have now? Can doctors deny patients right now? Yes, they can. Are they denying patients right now? Yes, they are. Are nurses denying patients now? Yes, they are. Are people lying out in the middle of hallways on the grounds and on stretcher without care? Yes, they are. So the current system is a mess. People are suffering greatly. What we're offering is a new model that is going to actually allow for Jamaicans to have high quality hospitals and clinics that are run at high quality levels, and the rich will pay for those services as they're currently doing, but now it's going to be available to rich and poor, and the poor will now have the government pay. instead of what we have now, which is the government being both the operator and the regulator, which takes away their objectivity and takes away their accountability, because you have both the regulator and the operator as one. And that's why we end up with a very substandard system, and the UIC has figured out how to fix it. So let's focus on the substance and not the form.
So just to get you on record, just to get you on record, because, so you're saying under your watch, under your administration, doctors will not be able to deny patients, or hospitals cannot turn away patients because of the free-for-all systems that you have.
So you've just called it a free-for-all system, which I don't know what you mean by that.
A free market system.
Oh, okay. So in a free market system, a customer can go to any seller of a service, and that seller.
I understand, Mr. Patterson. I understand. Hold on. What I'm asking is, I don't want to get away from the question. I'm just putting you on record.
Yes.
Will any doctor or health care provider be able to deny patients or citizens treatment under your administration?
Every single establishment in Jamaica will be able to decide what they do with their customer, and they'll pay the price for that based on the choices of the customers. So if you go to Burger King, they can decide if they don't want to serve you a burger, and they'll suffer the consequences for that. If you go to the doctors and they decide that they don't want to serve you, they'll suffer the consequences for that. What you're asking me to say to you is not reasonable and not realistic.
So you cannot say yes or no.
Because I'm not going to be in a position to stop a doctor from saying to a patient, I don't want to take you as a patient. I'm not going to be in a position to do that. Nor do you want me to be in a position to do that.
Right.
You don't want me dictating to you which patient you take and which patient you don't. Nor do you want me to dictate to you which song you can sing and which song you don't.
So let's say you turn up at the hospital and you do not have money to pay. You can be denied under your watch. Can you be denied under your watch?
You will, if it's about the money,
right?
Everybody goes to the healthcare facility with a card. If you're poor, it's the same card as the rich. So nobody knows. The hospital will not be making a decision based on your ability to pay, because you'll have a card. So if you're poor, the card will be accepted and you'll be paid for. If you're rich, your card will be accepted if you have money in your account. The poor will always have money in their account because they're being funded by the government. So if it's a matter of money you're talking about, and not a matter of making a choice, for example, if you go to the dentist and they say, I can't take no more patient, I'm full, that's him making his decision. You go to another dentist. But if it's about money you're talking, where the poor goes.
I'm speaking on that.
Okay. So when the poor goes, he will go with a card. He will have a card, a health card, which is issued to him by the government. The same, by the government, I mean by the system, the same health card that is issued to the rich. The only difference between the rich and the poor is who is paying in the end. The provider of the service will be paid, but who is ultimately paying? The rich is going to pay full price because he's rich, and the poor is going to pay zero because he is poor, or the middle income person is going to pay half because they're middle income, for example. Just simplifying it here.
I hear what you're saying, Mr. Patterson, but even what you're implementing, you're proposing that you're going to implement. So you're saying the rich will have to pay because they're rich, and the poor who's going to turn up with a similar card as the rich. Yeah. So doctors will have a choice to tell a poor person, when that person shows up at the hospital or the healthcare facility, that I am full. Because
you didn't hear what I said a while ago. You didn't hear. The doctor has, if it's about the money, the doctor doesn't have an issue, because the doctor is not being paid based on whether you're rich or you're poor. The doctor is being paid regardless. So the money is not the issue, because you are using a card.
Who's paying the doctor?
The government is paying the doctor. As I said before, the rich person will have to pay the account, because his account is going to register that his income level is $10 million a year. And the account of the poor person will say his income level is $250,000 a year. And so based on that, the algorithm will say, okay, you owe X amount to the government. while the algorithm will say for the poor person, you owe 0 based on your last tax filing.
So the healthcare system is going to be funded by the government, basically what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm trying to make sure you understand. The rich will pay what they can, and the poor will pay what they can. Everybody has one health insurance card. You understand? Right now, the current system, which they call free healthcare, falsely tell you it's free, and then the poor suffers immensely, and the rich can buy their healthcare.
Let me step away from the manifesto because I don't want to throw off your fan base. Admiral Bailey released a crime plan this week. I don't know if you got a chance to see, which he is asking for stricter punishment for especially murderers or people that are held with guns that have committed crimes, so forth, so on. And he's actually in his plan, he's proposing the death penalty. Would you support the death penalty in your administration, or if you should take office?
No, we will not.
Why would you not?
We think the death penalty is too serious. We don't think any system at all is foolproof, especially one in a corrupt system as it is now. So we would not recommend a death penalty in a system where you cannot be certain that justice was served. And we can never be certain that all the facts are as they appear to be. You know how skillful lawyers are, and how people can plant evidence. Things can be. So we don't want a situation where you can't reverse what was done. And when death is the final, when you kill somebody, it's over. There's no reversing that.
Let's say there's a child gets raped and there's DNA evidence present in the in the file or the court documents, and that person is found guilty. Would that be any different from what you're saying?
No different, because we don't know for certain. You are saying that based on the evidence, you are certain that there's absolutely no room for error, and we're saying we cannot be certain there's no room for error. So we're not going to support the death penalty.
If there's DNA evidence present, it is still not 100% for you.
No, as I said before, we're not certain. There's no certainty. Even if you said DNA evidence is present, there's no certainty. So we're not going to support the death penalty. We believe in other means. Yeah.
Or what's your plan for the crime in the crime rate in Jamaica, to bring the crime rate down in Jamaica?
Right.
Because
so
I don't see anything in the reason why I ask, I've not seen anything in the manifesto that basically detailed how we're going to get rid of crime and violence in
right.
society.
And we can't put anything that details you're going to get rid of. It's actually quite foolish to do that. But generally speaking, the UIC is going to approach crime from a top-down perspective and economics from a bottom-up perspective. So we believe strongly that, first of all, you cannot ask those who created the crime problem to fix it, because they would implicate themselves, which incentivizes them not to do what they need to do. Secondly, we believe that you need to try to cut off the head of the crime problem, and that's largely related to corruption. So you're going to find that we need to forensically investigate the politicians and the heads of the police force, the high command, and also those in the boardrooms of the big companies, and see if you can find any connection between them and the criminal underworld. For example, it's not the little guy with his pants falling off his bottom that is engineering a skillful importation of guns and ammunitions in a continuous form that is supporting and reinforcing the gang violence that we're seeing. So if we look carefully and get serious investigations going, we'll find some serious data that can help us to actually find the culprits and arrest them. We believe we're going to have to work with external agencies initially to help us, because our system is very contaminated at the moment. We also want to use a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because we believe we need to document the history of crime in Jamaica. It has a history, one that you can actually plot. You can see the changes year over year, and you can see what's going on. We want to drill down into that and get that documented so that Jamaicans understand the truth behind where this problem came from so that we don't repeat it again. We want to twin with that an amnesty program that will incentivize, especially those at the bottom of the crime syndicate, to come forward and give information that allows us to go after and get to the big kingpins in the matter, and give those persons at the bottom who have been used, who have been manipulated, whose poverty has been used against them, whose lack of proper education has been used to twist and turn them, give them a chance to come clean and get into a rehabilitation program.
All
And
right,
move
so we
forward.
seem to
Did you lose me?
have lost connection somehow. Not sure what's going on.
Did you lose me? I'm here.
I'm not quite sure what's going on. We seem to have lost connection somehow. Mr. Patterson, you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Vegas, you still hearing me?
Yeah, man.
All right, we lost connection somehow a while ago, but we're back. All right, so let me take this opportunity to welcome everyone who is listening. If you're just tuning in, we have the leader of the UIC, Mr. Joseph L. Patterson, having a discourse with entertainer Mr. Vegas. Now, I've noticed in the comment section where some persons seem to be misunderstanding what this conversation is all about. As I stated in the beginning of the live stream, not every Jamaican understands what a manifesto is or even ever heard of a manifesto, but yet they voted for the present party or the other one, right? So that means they're voting without even know why they are voting. Now, Mr. Vegas is asking questions pertaining to the manifesto. And though he may be seeming as if he is badgering Mr. Patterson, which he is not, but he is asking these questions so that the average person who cannot understand what is listed in the manifesto will get a simple breakdown from Mr. Patterson, right? So instead of thinking it is badgering, just listen and try to understand, because even if you understand, there is someone that doesn't know about the things listed in the manifesto. So allow these persons to hear these questions asked and get the answers. All right. So let's get back to the conversation with Mr. Vegas and Mr. Patterson. And so far, it's a good one. All right, Mr. Vegas, I'm not quite sure if you were the last one speaking, but take it over, brother.
No, it was Mr. Patterson, but just to piggyback on what you just said, we have to understand that people are yearning for change. So I do understand that people will try to protect whichever, because we're brought up on a system where we see a political party and we fall in love with the party, and because our mother and our grandmother and grandfather voted for JLP or PMP, so we do not address these issues. So I think it will be something similar if you had Andrew Holness on and I was asking these questions, because I think some of the interviewers have some form of political affiliation or some form of likings or favoritism when it comes down to political leaders. I'm not trying to gain friendship from Mr. Patterson or likability from the audience. I'm just asking these questions because I think these are questions that some people may have. It's not everyone is going to go for this program. And understand this, Mr. Patterson, I don't think Mr. Patterson is here trying to convince people who have already made up their minds to vote for him. Yeah, you have the undecided voters that I think Mr. Patterson, as a politician, will understand that he will have to convince, and I'm an undecided voter. So I guess I'm not. I don't think I'm the only one. So it was Mr. Patterson was speaking on his crime plan, and I don't know if you want to go over it again, Mr. Patterson. I was asking about the death penalty. I think they heard that you said you're not in favor of the death penalty. So I asked, what is your plan to bring down the crime rate in Jamaica?
Yes, so earlier, I'm not sure how much they heard, but I spoke about the having a top-down approach, which includes making sure that we do a forensic investigation of the leaders of the country, those who are leading in the boardrooms of the private sector, those who are leading in our political sphere, and those who are leading in our police force. Because based on how Jamaica evolved as a country and the close connection between crime, politics, and corruption, we can see where it's really not the little boys that they're scraping up with their state of emergencies. They're bigger fish that are controlling the movement of monies and the movement of guns and ammunition in and out of the country, through the border, the drug for gun trade, and so on. So we really need to be honest about the approach. And the first step we have to do is to remove the two parties which are culpable. We know historically that they have been very, very tight with gangs, and they have created garrisons, and there are so many incidences, including what happened with the 2011 with the former Prime Minister, Mr. Golden, and the Tivoli incursion. And we've seen this across the board, both parties. So we know that they're culpable. We know that their hands are not clean. So we need to have a fresh start. So electing the UIC gives Jamaica that fresh start with a political movement and party that has not been tainted by that. We want to make sure we do the investigation side, not us as the party, but having a transparent process where we really investigate all the politicians, especially those that have been in key leadership roles, the leadership of the police, the private sector organization of Jamaica, to understand. Then we also want to make sure we have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that allows us to bring out as much as possible the truth and empower the Jamaican people to come forward and speak, to have a proper witness protection program, to make sure we protect witnesses, to give amnesty to especially those at the lower end of the scale so that they can come forward, share their stories, give us the full information, and get themselves rehabilitated and brought back into society. So we have a comprehensive program. Not just that, we want to make sure we deal with who is coming out of school now. So we have a YES program, the youth employment solution program, to capture all of the young people coming out of school who are not going into another program like university or a trades program. Get them into an apprenticeship program immediately, being paid in the private and public sector, to get them away from potential gang connectivity. We also want to bring in the workfare program instead of welfare, because we're opposed to welfare. It's just a ridiculous thing. So a workfare program. So all the families that we're going to help through the 10% GCT to make sure their kids go to school and get the nutrition and get proper housing, we also get them into a works program. So they're involved in some productive sector, for example, agriculture and so on, and get them working and becoming productive. These are the ways you move the country away from being corruption-centered and being, pulled into more and more criminal activities. Deal with the top, deal with the bottom, fix the systems in between, and that will get us to a safer Jamaica in the end.
So you're basically saying you're gonna invite people to come in and get some form of immunity for crimes committed, or whatever information they can disperse. You will be willing to negotiate with criminals and give them some form of amnesty. That's what I'm hearing.
So what you're hearing is that we are going to provide amnesty to persons who provide actionable information that helps us to solve the crime problem.
So in your manifesto under crime and justice, we oppose the prosecutorial practice of overcharging in criminal prosecutions to avoid jury trials by intimidating defendants into accepting plea bargains. So wouldn't this be something similar to what you're opposing here in your crime and justice segment of your manifesto?
No, absolutely not. That's talking about trying to intimidate a person that has been caught. You're trying to intimidate them into a plea bargain. That's very different from a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that also has an amnesty program. This is not people that we have caught. These are people who are going to come forward.
So people, so in your manifesto, you're against intimidating defendants into accepting plea bargains.
Yes, absolutely.
But
yes.
you're okay with criminals coming in and saying, okay, I committed this crime, and you decide what type of punishment bestowed on them at that time?
No, as I said before, it will be a part of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So you're talking about a fixed time period with carefully crafted parameters, which gives all of Jamaica an opportunity to come clean if they so desire.
But wouldn't this be opening up the doors of persons committing crime to just be like, okay, I killed the man, and come in and say, oh, okay, I did this, and expecting a slap on the wrist, something similar to people getting caught with guns and I'm getting some form of lenient sentence. And
No, it's
and you don't think plea bargains leads to like crown witness that helps to apprehend other criminals?
no, the plea bargain side is clearly dealt with. We're making it very clear. We're not into overcharging or intimidating persons into getting into a plea deal. So that's a given. You can park that. What we're talking now is about a crime strategy, a plan that is needed for a Jamaica that's in a serious and precarious condition. And so that involves a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where we try to get Jamaicans to be a part of a conversation, a part of a process where we try to get at the problem and get a resolution, a big resolution, compared to just trying to keep fighting through the issue. It includes an amnesty program that is going to give those, especially at the bottom segment of the society, a chance to come clean, turn in their weapons, give us actionable information that is verifiable by the commission, and help us to put this to bed. Is it ideal? No, it isn't. Is it better than anything else we can possibly do? Yes.
But what if that does not reap any benefits? What you're gonna do? What's the alternative? What if this does not work?
Now, as I said before, remember, that's not just one piece. We talked about having the investigation happening from the top down. We talk about getting our children that are leaving school not to be prey for the gangs by moving them into a program. We talk about the workfare program. It's a very comprehensive solution, but this is one element of it that we just spoke about, which is the Truth and Reconciliation and the amnesty program. That's just one element. The rest of it still holds. So please remember the rest of it. But this is still an important element of it.
How will you block guns from coming in through the ports?
Excellent question. So we believe that we need to use our army in a more effective way. So we're going to get our army fully involved in border patrol and border control, including handing over the customs aspect of our country to the armed forces, so that we have a very different kind of operations with people who are trained differently, who have a different mindset, a different checks and balance structure, and see if we can create that separation that is going to allow us to intimidate those who want to try to come in and disconnect from the kind of political interference and police interference that currently obtains or might currently obtain. So by shifting to the armed forces being not just there, but fully engaged now, we're not talking about slightly engaged and every now and again, fully engaged in active border patrol day and night, searching for and looking for. So our army is going to become a fully engaged army now compared to what it exists. They're going to be involved in surveillance of our borders, tracking what's happening on our perimeters, covering our barriers or water, and making sure that we're on top of our borders. This is going to cut off and choke the inflow of guns and ammunitions. And if a person have no ammunitions, they can't fire a gun.
Mr. Patterson, your ambitions for the country is very enticing, I think, to voters. I'm a bit optimistic because I think you will not have the money. I believe you will not have the money because all of these things that you're proposing, I think they will come at a high cost, especially to monitor the ports. And with you removing taxes from removing property taxes and only charging 10% income tax and sales taxes. Is it impossible? I'm not. Nothing is impossible, but I think your work is cut out, brother.
Yes.
And I wish you well. And
Thank you.
thank you for inviting me in your space, Unstoppable.
Sure. And
But
just before you go, um, one of the problems people have with understanding how taxes work, you see, right now we have a proliferation of taxes with different levels of compliance, with a 10% income tax. And by the way, it's not income that you simply earn at a job. It's 10% on income from all sources, which is a very different model from PAYE tax. Income for including monies that is being sent into the country from our wonderful diaspora. All that now becomes taxable income. By lowering the rate to 10%, your compliance level is going to go up tremendously, because it is cheaper now to comply than to find different tactics not to comply. The cost of not complying also goes up, because persons who fail to fully declare will now have a 50% charge on undeclared income, plus the declared income. So the cost of complying, the cost of lying, the cost of cheating is going to go up, and the benefit of not lying and cheating is going to be tremendous. So we understand the model, we understand the quantity of tax base that we're now going to have, and we have carefully calculated those and looked at the impact.
but property taxes is a major part of the income that funds society. Would you agree?
No, it's not actually. It's not a major part, to be honest. But it is.
Have you looked at the number? What's
Yeah, I can't recall the number right now, but it's not a major part. The biggest part of your income right now is coming from tourism and bauxite mining, and
Right.
on the gasoline taxation. Those are the biggest drivers of revenue right now for the government.
Well, I guess you will be getting a lot more taxes on gasoline, because removing the government subsidies from the energy company, I think the owners are going to jack up the price on the cost consumers. But let's see what happens. And I think you should really look forward. You should really look into term limits on going forward, because if all these things that you're saying, of course, it sounds good to voters. I would guess it sounds good to voters, but there needs to be some amount of accountability, and this has been the problem with politics over the years. Like a politician can always make promises, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, and when they get into office, nothing is done. Case in point, Andrew Holness ran on a crime plan, and I've not seen some of the things that he proposed, like body camera and all of these things that was proposed by the Andrew Holness administration. So I think there needs to be a term limit where voters can be like, you know what, you promised these things and you made no effort, or you did not get these things done. Yeah. So I think that will be something interesting going forward. But
And currently we have a term limit. In the next election, the people are going to terminate the prime minister based on his performance. And for the UIC, it's very simple. The focus must be on good governance, not on simply trying to put these mechanisms in place, which politicians will find a way around them. For example, what you have a term limit, and the person put him friend in next, him come out and stay in the background and control him and still gets up. So let's focus on the good governance, not on the superficial solutions that may or may not work.
Saying that, I would get in trouble if I do not ask you this question from my brother Imhotep. I think it's public record with your case of getting arrested. Of you getting arrested, what is the status of your case, and will you be suing the government for illegal arrest?
Yeah. So what happened was they charged me with breaching the DRMA and the Public Order Act, and we in turn charged them with breaching our constitutional right. So they have had to set aside their charges while we pursue this in the Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court has delayed in giving us a date until now. I think they've finally issued a date now. So in between then and now, I've been going in and out of court ever so often to face the new mention of the case, which is costly. But we're getting close now to the Supreme Court having a hearing on my side, because their side has been set aside temporarily because I have now brought forward the constitutionality of the DRMA and the Public Order Act. So very soon, hopefully, we will have an audience with the Supreme Court.
So based
go
on your
from there.
knowledge of the Constitution, are you saying the Constitution, your Constitution, right, is overrides the Disaster Risk Management Act?
Yes, I'm saying that the government did not have the right to create the act and to use it in the way that it did.
No, I'm just
And
asking you, in a time of disaster risk management, I'm just asking because I know that if there's a time of in the time of war or any type of pandemic, I know the Constitution is a little bit tricky right there, especially if the government institutes some form of disaster risk management act.
Well, the Constitution provides for emergencies. The Prime Minister did not use the methods prescribed by the Constitution. He circumvented that with the DRMA, and he's going to pay for that.
Well, luckily we have the Constitution, and it's from the British states. I hope your Constitution is going to be.
No, the new Constitution will be far more protective of Jamaicans.
Right.
But we found a base to challenge the current action of the government in the existing weak Constitution.
Looking forward to your campaigns, brother. Big up yourself.
Thank you.
Vegas, before you leave, my brother, before you leave, Vegas, this is surprising to me that one of the things that you have been fighting for a long time now, I didn't hear you even ask Mr. Patterson about it not once. I'm surprised. So ask him, man, because we don't understand how you leave out that.
Oh, on the matter of the amendment to the sex registry act, I think that's what you're, because we're going over the manifesto and I didn't see anything in the manifesto regarding that. So I know it's a kind of sore issues for Jamaicans, and I maybe wanted to speak about it another time, but just quickly, if you could, I've been advocating for changes in the sex registry, because I think the way it is now, it's basically useless. Case in point, if someone is convicted today and they're supposed to be on the sex registry for 10 years and they go to jail today and serve 10 years, when they get out of jail, they're no longer on the sex registry because it's only 10 years they're on the sex registry, and it starts the day they enter the facility or the institution. So I wanted to get your take on the amendment for the Sex Registry Act. Would you support amending the Sex Registry Act so it's public, especially for schools and the workplace?
I think anybody who is applying for a sensitive position should be, especially working with children, and you're talking about, sexual violence, right? Different forms. You should have a registry, and the registry should be available to those who need to check. So what you do, you submit a request, and it comes back negative or positive to say this person is on the registry, and therefore, you can now make a choice whether you want to employ them or not. We have to a certain degree, look at, privacy issue, while at the same time protecting the victims and protecting people from potential criminal acts. And so I believe having a registry that is accessible to those who are doing any form of employment, which requires you to look at that sensitive nature, you make sure you have access to it and you can check. So I would support such an amendment to give access to those who must verify whether or not somebody's on the registry or not.
But what about the public at large?
You have to be careful with the public at large bit in terms of how you deal with it, because if a person commits a crime, and there are many criminals out there, right, that have committed a crime, do we have a public registry to say, let's list every single criminal, and so anybody in the society goes and check, is this person a criminal? What you have instead is a criminal background record check, and you go and check the background and see if the person have a record, and then you make a decision. So I might want to hire you to cut my lawn, and I don't know if you have been previously convicted of a charge or whatever. I have a right as a potential employer or contractor to say, let's have a criminal background record check. And if you say I don't want to submit to the check, then we can end the conversation if we want to, or I can choose to hire you still if I want to. What you want is a registry which is accessible properly, that still protects relative privacy when it comes down to whatever, but give the employer or the person who is trading with you the right to check the registry before they make a final decision.
But you as a citizen, wouldn't you want to know if there is a convicted rapist or child molester living next door to you?
Absolutely, everybody would want to know that.
Right. So why would you not implement such changes in the sex registry for citizens to know? And if we're worried about criminals or convicts getting some form of coming under some form of attack from citizens, all these cases are reported in the media. So if citizens were trying to go after these people, they would have been doing that. There's no record of citizens going after anyone that has been convicted of these crimes, and it's in the media.
Well, the same logic applies, right? If it's already in the media, why do you need to do it? But I'm not opposed, what I'm saying is, let's have a registry and make sure it's accessible to those who need to check. So you want to check because you have a valid concern, you make a request for the stuff and you get the information that you need. I think we have to be careful about simply wanting to put out a mass general thing and say, here's everybody, and you can just go look generally and so on. We might want to think about that carefully. I would want to get some legal advice on that. I don't want to give you just a general, quick blanket on this. I think we need to check it out carefully. But I appreciate your concern. It's a good one.
Yeah, big up yourself.
Yes.
All right. So firstly, let me say it was a healthy conversation between both gentlemen. I took the back seat and gave you the forefront. I just was listening. And I myself got answers to some of the questions that I probably didn't even know I wanted to ask, right? And like I said, there are many Jamaicans out there, and I'm sure Mr. Patterson knows this, that there are many Jamaicans out there that vote for the wrong reasons, right? And the idea behind this conversation is to inform and educate and make those not so wise a little bit wiser, right? As to why you should vote when you go to put your X beside whichever party you're voting for, right? So this conversation right here, I hope it enlightened majority of you are listening as to what exactly the UIC is all about and what they intend to do. Now, Mr. Vegas, I have a question for you specifically, family, before you leave, right? Yeah. After speaking with the UIC president, Mr. Patterson, and over time you have been following what they're all about and what they're doing, would you consider yourself one that would go and say, you know what, I'm going to put my X beside the UIC?
I just want what is best for Jamaica. I just want what is best for Jamaica. So, but it has to be plausible and especially what Mr. Or achievable, if that's the right, word. For me to decide on, because I've never voted in my life, first thing. So this, you understand, this I would have to look at the possibilities and the interests of a better Jamaica is what is most important for me going forward. I think the Marcus Garvey party is something I've looked at, and it's a shame that people have not taken, especially the Rastafarian community. I think with such a low turnout in the last election, I think people seems to forget that there is a party, from a Marcus Garvey party in Jamaica, and people have not looked into it. And I thought the Rastafarian community would have more looked towards the Marcus Garvey party, which I was truly interested in and wanted to see what the leaders of those parties or the representative of those parties had to offer. And I'm still looking for them. Maybe Mr. Patterson is going to ignite some form of, debate or whatever from them, or public presentation. So I appreciate what Mr. Patterson is doing, and the UIC, at least they're making themselves available to the public so people can agree and disagree respectfully. Yeah, so that's a positive for me from Mr. Patterson and his party. I think the the humility and the respect for, and you're gonna come under, if you get into into office, Mr. Patterson, you're gonna come. This is what I'm doing here is chicken feed, and you are well aware of that. But I think you may be built to last, so we'll see. But
Well,
I'm looking forward to you on the campaign trail. I think you have something different, and just keep it honest with the people. I think that's been missing from the political landscape. Honesty. So I wish you well.
And not only
thank
honesty,
you.
transparency as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Transparency as well. And that's what I like with the UIC. I like the fact that Mr. Patterson comes out and he speaks to the people like people. Just to say it just like that, right? He talk to the people like people, him down to earth, and him keep it
That's
real.
why we have to give him a term limit. So if him change with us, done with him.
Well, you can vote me out, So after the first 5 years, you just say you lead a
No, we'd have,
campaign.
we'd have to get rid of your whole party, and maybe there are other
No,
elements
man,
in the
no,
party.
no. Remember, you just simply say on the 5 year mark, but done with the UIC, and you go on the platform
Mr.
and
Patterson,
say,
the people them like you, man, them look right through that what you're saying right now. Big up yourself.
no, man, the serious stuff. Just don't vote for him. But quick thing for you though, the Marcus Garvey party is no longer. It's not a registered political party.
I didn't even know that they
Yeah.
unregistered it. So there
So
you
let me tell you what happened. And you need to know this. In 2018, they changed the laws. Remember before that the JLP and PP set the rules and just do whatever they want to do.
Right.
In 2018, they made up a new set of rules, a formal set of rules that eliminated all third parties. And the both of them were quickly registered under the new rule and became the only two parties. The UIC is the first movement to challenge them, and they battled us because the rules were created to destroy third parties. But to be honest, it was decided, and so the Marcus Garvey party, the NDM, all the other parties were immediately now null and void when the new rules came into effect secretly. It was in the public, but we don't have investigative journalism. We don't have proper stuff, so the Jamaican people don't know what is going on. So they passed this new law which got rid of third parties and made those two the only two party. And then we now came in and battled them. I mean, battle for 10 straight months until they had to now register us as the first third party, the only new party in Jamaica. And then in the 2020 election, realizing that they want to make sure that they confuse the people, in 2 weeks, they quickly approved another party. So that
the church.
Yes, yeah, because they wanted all of that craziness now to come up, because they thought we were going to contest the 2020 election. We backed out because we said, if you say COVID are gone and we can't do what we're supposed to do, how can you call an election 9 months early than necessary and tell us we must come out and vote when you tell us that the situation is too bad for us to do this? So we boycotted that election. But before they knew we would have boycotted it, they hurry up and quickly approve this other group so that now they could have this confusion in the marketplace. It's very strategic, So let's not take these guys for idiots. They know what they're doing. They're very strategic, and their commitment is to make sure that Jamaica only has those two parties. They know that there's no money for third parties because they have the PSOJ fully committed to them. So every year they go and get their big allotment of money, millions of dollars. The UIC rely on $10, $25, $50 from Jamaicans here at home and abroad, right? So they know that they have the purse strings to do it. But we are determined, the UIC is determined to break that gridlock and make sure Jamaicans have a new option to defend their rights.
Good luck, brother.
Thank you.
Yes, also, Mr. Patterson briefly touched on it a while ago when he said, the UIC is funded by the people, on 5 year, 110 there, so and so. So that with that said, the UIC has no big corporation behind them. They're in the pockets of anybody, right? So would you be, as an entertainer, would you be want to say, what, as an artist, as a Jamaican that wants the best for Jamaica, I would myself contribute to the UIC as well as influence my fellow co-workers to come on board and help this party to be stronger? Is that something that you would consider?
As I said before, what I'm a strong believer that Jamaica, is not gone to the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think difference is good. So of course, if it's going to be beneficial to the country, the best interest of the nation, of course, I will support in every way that I can, not only by donating, but by assisting in whatever way I can for a better Jamaica. But it has to make sense.
And
Let's
influence,
be realistic.
influence goes a very far away as well.
Exactly. That's why I took the 3 hours now to get a better understanding, because I'm not alone in my circle, and I think every vote counts. Whether people want to accept that, yes or no. So I'm looking forward to more. Yeah, I know Tanya Stevens is a big supporter, and she has a lot of money, so don't even worry about money, Mr. Patterson. She got you.
Well, we need your money too. We don't just want Tanya money. We want everybody money.
Everybody plays a part.
But you know what?
Everybody plays a part.
You know what? My boy is Nesta, who's from the Jamaica Labour Party. I think he's a decent human being. I'm really looking forward to Nesta in the future to lead Jamaica. I know he's not into corruption. I can put my neck on the block for Nesta. Hopefully, he's not going to let me down. But you would have to, get around Nesta for me to get to the UIC. Nesta is like my brother. But of course, the better for the country is more important to me. Betterment for the country.
Well, I'm going to encourage you to watch some more of our videos. I did one on the banking fraud, which you might not be aware of, a massive fraud that was committed by the two parties working together, $20.6 billion transferred, and the central bank now passed to private hands, while telling us they're protecting us in doing so. And I've also done a video earlier today on the Great Reset, which both parties have bought into, which is really, if it succeeds, and it is gradually succeeding in many ways, will be a tremendous disaster for Jamaica and for you as a person. All of us as individuals are at risk. So the UIC manifesto was not built on a whim. It is very carefully designed to protect us, even though it might seem a bit harsh in some things because it's so different from what we have been taught. But it's really designed to make sure that Jamaica become that one only free country in the world if everybody else decide to go the wrong way. Jamaica will be a safe haven for those who love freedom. And believe me, that will be a massive advantage if Jamaica is that space where every other country in the world can look to and say, when things are falling apart, go other country there, because the setup is such that you will be protected, you will be respected, and you can actually own things and own your assets and live a decent life if you want to. So carefully look at it. It is more than it appears.
Yeah, man. I'll definitely check it out. And remember, Unstoppable back here on Sunday with pastors.
Yeah,
Prophet
no,
Smith.
definitely. That definitely have to be highlighted. But
Right.
we've been here now for 3.5 hours, which is a
lot of
good
time.
amount of time. So Vegas, I'm going to give you the opportunity to give your closing statements, and then Mr. Patterson, I'll allow you as well. So go ahead, Vegas.
In a nutshell, I'm just interested in what's best for the country. I think crime and violence, is painting a bad image of Jamaica. Jamaica is a beautiful country, and I think more needs to be done to get us back to, I think, what Andrew Wilness had proposed in his earlier campaign when he was running for, when he got elected, of people sleeping with their doors open. And I still, I'm a bit optimistic on it, but I think it can be achieved. So that is why I'm interested in the political side of what's happening with the UIC.
All right, my brother. Mr. Patterson, there you go. Go right ahead.
Sure, thank you. It's really a pleasure to be on this live, to be able to chat with Mr. Vegas and yourself, Unstoppable. I believe it gave the Jamaican people an opportunity to think about the manifesto of the UIC and to consider the future they want for Jamaica. The UIC is very committed, more than anything else, to make sure we protect the sovereignty of every single Jamaican as well as the sovereignty of Jamaica. It's very important that we learn to unlearn many things that we have been taught and fed that this is what is good for us. And in the end, it has proven to be fake and not delivering on the things that they promise. Some people promised us security and are unable to deliver because they're compromised. Some people promise us economic growth and are unable to deliver because the system is not designed to allow Jamaicans to fully engage in the economy. Some people promise us that our children would be learning at top levels and producing and performing. And obviously, that's not happening because it's not true, it's fake. It's time for us as Jamaicans to step out of the shadows of the colonial models of economics, of education, of healthcare, and all that kind of stuff, and think about what really works and design a system that is truly Jamaican and benefits the interest of all Jamaicans, not just a few.
Thank you, sir. All right. So before you go, Mr. Patterson, I know you've said this over and repeatedly, but I'm seeing persons in the comment section asking where they can go to donate to the UIC. So if you just want to answer
Sure.
that question for them again.
Absolutely. So you can always find us on the internet, uicjamaica.com. Most of our handles are just UIC Jamaica. So whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, it's always UIC Jamaica. So just look for UIC Jamaica, click on the donate page on our website, and it will give you multiple options. You can send wire transfer, you can send by Western Union, you can send by PayPal, you can use your credit card. So all the options are there on our website, uicjamaica.com. And if you have any problem at all, just reach out to our office at 876-293-0812. That's 876-293-0812. We're here for you, and we thank you for your support, because without you, we're nothing. We depend on ordinary Jamaicans here in Jamaica and around the world to fund the movement, because big business, the PSOJ, and the colonial masters and special interest groups, they will not support us, because we do not support any special interest group. Especially, our focus is on protecting the rights and freedoms of Jamaicans and giving you a system that makes sure you're safe, our country is clean, and it's orderly. That's our focus. We're not going to acquiesce to any special interest groups. We're going to continue to work for the Jamaican people, and we need you to help the party to do that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. And also thank you, Mr. Viegas, for joining me on the platform. And viewers, as you heard Mr. Viegas mentioned earlier, this Sunday he will be right here again for another engaging conversation. And this one, nobody now go on for miss. He's going to be reasoning with Pastor Spearmore Smith, right? And it's going to be very intense and engaging. You don't want to miss it. Mr. Patterson, thank you so much.
This one is not going to be so subtle, I think. Because
it's going to be a high-spirited conversation.
It's going to be a lot of fire and brimstone and gnashing of teeth.
Mr. Patterson, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Mr. Vegas,
My
thank
pleasure.
you for joining us, my brother. And I will see you, Mr. Vegas, Sunday. Mr. Patterson, I will give you a call after the live stream so we can continue the conversation.
All right. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
All right, Unstoppable family, thank you so much for being here this evening in this conversation, because it was really a great one. All right. I love the questions Mr. Viegas put forward to Mr. Patterson. All right. And I do hope that, most of you who didn't understand what the things in the manifesto meant, only get a little basic understanding right now of what it is. And if you haven't seen the manifesto, please go on the UIC's website and go read the manifesto. Try to get a basic understanding of what is there. Get an understanding of the reason why you're going to go vote for any party when you decide for vote. Go and analyze the UIC's manifesto. Go and analyze the PNP's manifesto. Go and analyze the JLP's manifesto. Compare all three of them and see which one sounds like the better plan for the country. All right? That is what I'm advising you to do right now. Because like I said earlier, I'm quite sure that a lot of you here never even heard of a manifesto before today, or the past couple of days since we have been talking about it. So if you never knew what a manifesto is, or if you even heard of it before but you still don't know how to read a manifesto and understand it, look it up. All right? Because that is very important. All right, viewers. Now I want to stress it again that this Sunday 6 p.m. All right, right here on YouTube and on Facebook Live, just like how we're doing right now. We're going to have Mr. Vegas alongside Pastor Spearmore Smith having a biblical discussion. Now, we all know Mr. Vegas' views on Christianity, religion, the Bible, stuff like that. So it won't be an argument. It will be similar to what it is where I will be here, moderating the conversation so that it goes smoothly, right? But it will be a biblical conversation where Mr. Vegas will be addressing things in the Bible and Mr. Smith, Pastor Smith, will be responding to what Mr. Vegas is saying. Now, most of them may remember the last platform that Mr. Vegas was on with a pastor, a bishop, or whatever he may have been. Didn't go so well. But this one will be extremely engaging and informative. All right, 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. You don't want to miss it. I'm going to make sure that I set the schedule and post it so you can see it, and just set a reminder so that you don't miss it. Sunday evening at 6 p.m. So make sure you want to get the cooking out of the way. Make sure you want to get the house cleaning out of the way, and just prepare to come and sit back Sunday evening and enjoy that conversation. All right, family, thank you so much once again, and thanks to everybody who shared. Now, I had to block 1 and 2 little people, not too much. You understand? I had to block a few who still didn't understand the rules of my platform, that I do not allow name calling and disrespect. So big up to everybody else who did not get blocked. All right. But from I started the program, I asked persons to not do name calling. Let's be adults and learn to converse in the comment section without name calling and bashing and disrespectful comments. Right? We can do that. So big up to all who didn't get blocked. I had to block about 4 or 5 persons who insisted on name calling. Right? As simple as calling someone dunce or dumb or fool. I don't allow it. All right. So Sunday when you come, just make sure that you keep the same level of respect and you won't get blocked. All right. So again, thank you so much for tuning in this evening, and I will see you all on Sunday. Bless up.